Welcome back to Mr. Midnight. Look, I'm just going to say this straight, I almost didn't make this video. Not because the stories aren't real, they are. Not because they're not scary enough, trust me, they are. But because halfway through researching these cases, I found something that made me want to delete everything and pretend I never saw it. A woman who takes care of sick animals went camping in Alaska. When she got back, she had photos on her camera, dozens of them. Normal hiking photos, right? Except in one photo, there's an animal in the background. And it has no shadow, none. The trees have shadows, she has a shadow. But this thing? Nothing. That's just one person. There are 5 others. A bank worker, a cook, a teacher, people you'd walk past on the street and never think twice about. They all went camping alone in Alaska at different times, in different places. They didn't know each other, but their stories? Almost identical. Something in those woods is hunting people, and it's not a bear, it's not a wolf. It's something that can look like those animals, but isn't. Some made it out, some didn't. And the police reports? Half of them are labeled "Do Not Share with Media." Yeah, that kind of case. Subscribe if you want more stories they don't want you to know about. And keep watching, because what these people saw will change how you think about nature forever. My name is Angela Chen, and I was a veterinary assistant for 8 years. Past tense. I can't do that work anymore. I can't even look at dogs without my hands shaking. What happened to me in September 2021 on the Kenai Peninsula didn't just end my career, it ended the person I used to be. I need you to understand something before I tell you this story. I'm not some amateur who wandered into the woods unprepared. I grew up in Alaska. I've treated injured eagles, orphaned bear cubs, even a wolf with a broken leg through our wildlife rehab program. I know animals. I can read their body language like you read a book. I can tell when a dog is about to bite 3 seconds before it moves. I can spot stress, fear, aggression, illness, all from tiny behavioral cues most people miss. That knowledge didn't save me. If anything, it made what happened worse, because I knew with professional certainty that what I was seeing was impossible. In September 2021, I planned a 4-day solo camping trip to photograph wildlife for my nature blog. I picked a remote Forest Service trail on the Kenai Peninsula. It was rutting season, the time when bull moose compete for mates and get dangerously aggressive, but I knew how to handle myself. Make noise, give them space, never get between a bull and a cow. Simple rules that keep you alive. I drove out on a Thursday morning, parked at the trailhead, and hiked 3 miles to a clearing near a stream. Perfect campsite. I set up my tent, hung my food properly to avoid bears, and spent the afternoon hiking and photographing. The forest was beautiful, thick spruce trees, golden birch leaves, soft moss covering everything. I saw moose tracks everywhere, big, fresh prints in the mud. Exactly what I'd hoped for. That first evening, just before sunset, I spotted him through the trees. A massive bull moose, maybe 50 yards away, standing completely still in a patch of fading sunlight. He was enormous, probably 800 pounds, with a dark coat and a rack of antlers that had to span 5 feet. I'd never seen anything like it. My hands were shaking with excitement as I grabbed my camera. I started shooting, click, 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 zooming in to capture those incredible antlers. That's when my professional eye caught something that made my stomach drop. The proportions were wrong. I've seen hundreds of moose. I've studied their anatomy, treated injured calves, looked at skeletal structures in veterinary textbooks. A moose has specific proportions, body length to leg length, chest depth to height, skull size to antler spread. It's consistent across the species, like how all dogs have the same basic skull shape even if breeds look different. This moose's legs were too long. Not dramatically, just enough to make him look stretched, like someone had grabbed his body in Photoshop and pulled it vertically. His chest was too narrow. His neck was too thick. I lowered the camera and counted the antler points. In moose, you typically see 12 to 14 points even on trophy bulls. I counted 18. Then I counted again to be sure. 18 points, branching off in patterns that didn't quite match normal antler growth. Weird genetics, I muttered to myself. Sometimes animals have mutations. I raised the camera again. Through the telephoto lens, I could see his face clearly now. His eyes were wrong. Not brown like they should be, pale blue, like a husky's eyes. And the placement was wrong. They faced forward. Moose are prey animals. Deer, elk, moose, they all have eyes on the sides of their heads to watch for predators from all directions. It's basic evolutionary biology. But this moose's eyes faced forward like a wolf's, like a human's, like a predator's. And he was staring directly into my camera lens. I felt cold despite my jacket. Animals don't stare like that. When you make eye contact with a wild animal, they look away. It's a dominance thing, a threat assessment thing. Predators might hold your gaze briefly before attacking. Prey animals break eye contact immediately. This moose had been staring at me for 5 full minutes without moving anything except his sides, breathing in and out. His head was locked in position like it was bolted in place. His ears didn't twitch. His tail didn't swish. Even his breathing seemed wrong, too regular, too rhythmic. Exactly 4 seconds in, exactly 4 seconds out, like a machine. I should have left then. Every instinct I'd developed working with animals was screaming wrongness at me. But I'm a scientist at heart. I wanted to document this. So I kept taking photos. The moose started walking toward me. Not fast, slow, deliberate steps. Each hoof placed carefully, the stride length identical every single time. I backed up. Bull moose in rutting season are deadly. They charge without warning, and those hooves can cave in your skull. You give them space. But as I backed up, he kept coming. I stopped. He stopped. The distance between us stayed exactly the same, about 15 feet. I moved left. He moved left. I moved right. He moved right. He was matching me, mirroring my movements like he was learning what I'd do, like a researcher studying a test subject. The sun was setting. I backed toward my camp, and he followed, maintaining that precise 15-foot distance. When I reached my tent, I turned my back on him and quickly unzipped the entrance. Every animal handling course I'd ever taken said, never turn your back on a dangerous animal. But I had to get inside. I ducked into the tent and zipped it shut with shaking hands. Through the nylon walls, I could see his shadow, just standing there, watching. Then he started walking. I heard his hooves, heavy footsteps circling my tent, around and around, never stopping. The steps were perfectly rhythmic, crunch, 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 crunch. The same tempo, the same interval, over and over. Moose don't do this. Moose don't circle. They're not wolves. They're not predators that stalk prey. They graze, they rest, they move on. They don't patrol. But this thing circled my tent for hours. I lay in my sleeping bag, listening, counting the rotations. The pattern never changed, never sped up or slowed down, never paused. Just endless circles, like something playing a recording of footsteps. I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I'd hear those steps and remember those forward-facing blue eyes. When dawn finally came and light filtered through the tent, the footsteps stopped. I waited 10 minutes, then unzipped the tent and looked outside. He was gone. But the tracks around my campsite made my heart hammer in my chest. Perfect circles in the mud, overlapping like someone had drawn them with a compass. Dozens of them. But that wasn't the worst part. The tracks were too shallow. Moose weigh 600 to 800 pounds. When they walk on soft ground, their hooves sink deep 3-4 inches into mud. I've seen it hundreds of times. These tracks were maybe an inch deep, like whatever made them weighed almost nothing. I knelt down and examined them closely, using my professional training. The tracks showed cloven hooves, the right shape and size. But the stride pattern was wrong. Moose have a natural gait. They adjust their steps for terrain, place their hooves differently on slopes versus flat ground. These tracks showed the exact same stride length, over and over. No variation, no adjustment, just mechanical repetition. My hands were shaking as I pulled out my phone. No signal. I tried my GPS. It showed me standing in the middle of Skillack Lake, which was 3 miles west. The GPS was malfunctioning. I packed up my gear with numb fingers. I was leaving. Forget the photos, forget the trip. Something was very wrong here, and I was getting out. I shouldered my pack and turned toward the trail. He was standing on the path, blocking it, those pale blue eyes staring at me. "Get out of here!" I screamed. I clapped my hands hard. The sound echoed through the forest. Moose startle easily. The noise should have sent him running. He didn't even blink, didn't flinch, just stood there. sides moving in that too regular breathing pattern. I grabbed a rock and threw it near him, not at him, just close enough to scare him. It landed 2 feet from his front hooves. He didn't react. It was like throwing a rock at a statue. I tried to go around him through the trees. He moved to block me, stepping sideways with speed that was completely wrong. Moose are fast when they charge, but they're not agile. They don't sidestep like a horse. This thing moved like a chess piece sliding across a board. I tried the other direction, same thing. He moved to intercept, cutting off my path. For 30 minutes, I tried every angle. Every time, he blocked me. Not aggressively, he never charged or threatened, he just prevented me from leaving. And slowly, step by step, he herded me deeper into the forest, away from the trailhead, away from my car, away from any possibility of help. I was a veterinary assistant, and this thing was treating me like livestock, controlling my movement, pushing me where it wanted me to go. My throat was tight with fear, but I forced myself to think. If I couldn't go back, I'd go forward. Eventually, I'd hit another trail, a road, something. The peninsula wasn't that big. I just needed to stay calm and keep moving. The moose followed behind me now, maintaining that 15-foot distance. Every time I glanced back, he was there. Never closer, never farther, just watching with those predator eyes. After 2 hours of walking through increasingly dense forest, I stumbled into a clearing I'd never seen before. 3 tents were set up there. Nice tents, North Face, REI, expensive gear, but they were silent. No campfire smoke, no sounds of people. I called out, "Hello, anyone here?" Nothing. I approached the nearest tent. The rainfly was closed but not zipped. Inside, I could see a sleeping bag, a camping stove, a cooler. I opened the cooler. Food inside, still cold from ice that hadn't fully melted. Recent. Maybe 2 days old. But no people. I checked the second tent, same thing. Gear, food, personal items. A camera sitting on a sleeping bag, still turned on, battery dead. I picked it up and scrolled through the photos. Dozens of shots of a moose. The same moose. Those 18-point antlers, those blue eyes. That wrong body? My stomach turned over. The third tent had a journal lying open on top of a backpack. The handwriting was neat at first, then got progressively shakier. The 10th of September 2021. Amazing luck. Spotted a huge bull moose right near camp. Got incredible photos. He's still hanging around, going to try for more shots tomorrow. September 11. The moose hasn't left. He's just been standing at the edge of the clearing all day. We've taken probably 300 photos. Mark says something's off about him, but I think he's just never seen one this close. September 12. The moose circled our tents all night. None of us slept. When we tried to pack up and leave this morning, he blocked the trail. We tried going around through the forest, but he moved faster than anything I've ever seen, like he teleported. Mark says his proportions are wrong, says his eyes are the wrong color. I think we're all just tired and freaked out. September 13. Dave tried to run past it this morning. The moose moved so fast it was a blur. Dave's leg is broken. He's in his tent. We're too scared to move him. The moose is standing outside right now. I can see its shadow on the tent wall. It's been standing there for 6 hours. It hasn't moved at all. Not once. Don't animals get tired? Don't they need to eat or drink? What is it? September 14. Dave is getting worse. Fever. Infection maybe. We need to get him out. We tried yelling for help. The moose tilted its head when we yelled. Like it was listening, like it understood. Sarah thinks we should try to scare it off with fire. I think that's a bad idea. I think it wants us to try. I think it's testing us. September 15. It made sounds last night. Human sounds. Coughing. Whispering. I heard my dead brother's voice coming from that thing. Sarah heard her daughter. Dave won't stop crying. We're not leaving the tents. It's standing outside. Waiting. The entry ended there. I flipped through the rest of the journal. Empty pages. I put the journal down with shaking hands and looked around the clearing. There was blood on the ground near one tent. Not a lot, maybe a cup's worth. Dried, dark, drag marks leading into the forest. Something heavy had been pulled away. 3 tents, 3 people, no bodies. I heard breathing behind me. Slow, deliberate, that same mechanical rhythm. I turned around. The moose was standing at the edge of the clearing, 20 feet away. In the afternoon sunlight, I could see him more clearly than ever. My veterinary training kicked in automatically. I started analyzing him the way I would analyze an injured animal brought to the clinic. That's when I realized the truth. This thing wasn't an animal at all. I watched him for 30 seconds. He didn't blink. Not once. Every animal blinks, it's a reflex to keep eyes moist. But this thing's eyes stayed open, unmoving, fixed on me like camera lenses. Animals are never perfectly still. Even when they're standing alert, there are tiny movements, weight shifts, ear twitches, muscle tremors, tail flicks. This thing stood like a mannequin. The only movement was that breathing, and even that was wrong. 4 seconds in, 4 seconds out, exact intervals like it was counting. Nothing in nature is that regular. Hearts don't beat in perfect rhythm, there's natural variation, beat to beat. Breathing adjusts for temperature, exertion, stress, but this thing's breathing was metronomic. I stared at it, and it stared back, and I felt my worldview cracking apart. This wasn't a weird moose. This wasn't an animal with a mutation or a neurological disorder. This was something else, wearing a moose's shape. I sat down on a log, and the moose lowered its head like it was grazing, but it didn't eat. Its mouth moved near the grass, but nothing went in. It was mimicking grazing behavior without understanding the purpose. I stood up, the moose raised its head and stood alert. I pulled out my camera. The moose turned its head slightly, watching. It was copying me, mirroring my actions like it was learning human behavior by observation, like a researcher studying a test subject's responses. My throat was dry. I whispered, "What are you?" The moose didn't answer, but its head tilted slightly, and I swear I saw something like curiosity in those blue eyes. The sun was setting again. I couldn't stay in this clearing, not with that blood, those drag marks, those empty tents. I grabbed some food from one of the coolers and backed away toward the forest. The moose watched but didn't follow. I found a dense thicket of spruce trees and crawled inside, pulling my sleeping bag around me. Maybe if I hid, it wouldn't find me. Maybe I could sleep for a few hours, then hike out at dawn. I closed my eyes. I was so tired I fell asleep almost immediately. I woke to the sound of breathing. Close. Right outside the thicket, I lay perfectly still, heart hammering. Through the spruce branches, I could see the moose's legs, just standing there. The breathing continued, regular and mechanical. Then it made a sound. Not a moose sound. A cough. A human cough, wet and harsh. My blood turned to ice. Then a whisper. "Sarah." A woman's voice. Weak, frightened. Coming from the moose. "Sarah, where are you?" It was using the voices from the journal, from the missing campers, playing them back like a recording. I bit my fist to keep from screaming. More sounds. A man crying softly. Another voice saying "help, help, help," over and over in a flat monotone. All coming from that thing's body, layered over each other like a broken radio picking up multiple stations. The moose's head appeared in the gap between the branches. Those blue eyes found me in the darkness. The mouth opened. Inside was wrong. The throat went back too far, deeper than the skull should allow. And the teeth weren't moose teeth, they were flat and white, arranged in rows like human teeth. It spoke. The voice was layered, multiple tones at once, slightly out of sync. "Stay." I couldn't breathe, couldn't move. This wasn't happening. This was impossible. "What are you?" My voice came out as a whisper. The head tilted, 90 degrees. Then further. 180 degrees, completely upside down, the neck rotating in a way that would snap any vertebrate's spine. Those forward-facing eyes never left mine. "Learning," the layered voices said. "You. Watching. Teaching." Teaching what? Tears were running down my face. The head rotated further, now facing backward on its neck while the body faced forward. How to be. And I understood. This thing was wearing a moose like a disguise. It was studying humans by observing lost campers, learning our behavior, our fear responses, our patterns. The missing people, it had watched them until it learned everything it could from observation. Then what? "The others," I said. "Where are they?" The mouth stretched wider, showing more of those human teeth. It was smiling, inside, teaching, forever. "No. No, 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 no." "Why?" I was sobbing now. "Why are you doing this?" "Human behavior, pain, fear, need, samples." It started moving toward me. The body shifted, changing. The front legs lifted off the ground. The moose rose up, standing on its hind legs like a person. The front legs folded backward against its body. The torso elongated, stretched, growing taller. 8 feet, 9 feet. The antlers folded back against the skull like wings folding. The face was still moose-shaped but flattened, compressed, with those forward-facing eyes and that too wide mouth. It looked like something had studied a moose and a human and tried to split the difference. It reached for me with limbs that weren't quite legs or arms, something in between. Too many joints, bending in wrong directions. I scrambled backward, but there was nowhere to go. The thicket was dense behind me. The thing's chest began to open, like a door, like a cage door opening. The ribs spread apart with a wet, creaking sound, revealing a cavity inside its body. Inside were people, not dead, not dissolved, alive. I could see faces pressed against the inside of its chest like people trapped behind glass. Eyes open, mouths moving, conscious, aware. 3 people, maybe 4, absorbed into its flesh, their bodies merged with its tissue. One of them was a woman. Her mouth was moving. Help, help, help. The flat monotone I'd heard earlier. She'd been saying it so long she didn't even sound human anymore. You, next. Inside, teach, forever. I felt gravity shift. I was sliding toward it even though I was pushing backward. The ground tilted wrong, the air pressure changed. My body was being pulled toward that open cavity like it had its own gravity. I could see the woman's eyes inside. She was looking at me, pleading silently. Behind her, I saw a man with a broken leg, Dave from the journal. Still alive, still suffering. My body slid closer, 6 feet away, 5 feet. I could smell it now, not like an animal. Like formaldehyde and stagnant water and something else. Something chemical and alien. 4 feet. My hand found my pocket knife, the one I used at work every day, cutting bandages, opening packages, trimming gauze for wounds. My fingers fumbled with it. Got it open. 3 feet. The pull was stronger. I couldn't resist it anymore. With the last of my strength, I lunged forward and stabbed upward into one of those pale blue eyes. The thing shrieked. The sound was like nothing I'd ever heard. An elk's bugle mixed with human screaming, mixed with metal scraping metal, mixed with something else. Something that made my ears ring and my vision blur. The sound of wrongness given voice. The gravity released. I fell backward, hit the ground hard. The thing staggered, clutching at its face. The chest cavity slammed shut, trapping those people back inside. I ran. I ran through the dark forest, branches tearing at my face and arms, roots catching my feet. I fell, got up, fell again. My lungs burned, my legs screamed. I could hear it behind me crashing through the forest, making sounds like breaking wood and tearing metal. But it was slower now. Injured. I'd heard it. I ran toward the sound of water, the stream I'd camped near on the first day. If I could find it, I could follow it out. Streams lead to rivers, rivers lead to roads. I burst through the trees and splashed into the water. It was knee-deep, flowing fast over rocks. I waded across, slipped on the rocks, went under. The cold water shocked my system. I surfaced, coughing, and climbed the far bank. I looked back. The thing was standing at the water's edge. Back in moose form now, perfect and still, like nothing had happened. But one eye socket was empty, bleeding something dark that wasn't blood. It stood there, watching me with its remaining eye. Then it spoke one last time, that layered voice carrying over the sound of water. Next. Time. Angela. It knew my name. I'd never said my name out loud. Then it turned and walked back into the forest, moving on 4 legs, looking exactly like a normal moose. If you saw it, you'd just think it was a moose with an injured eye. I followed the stream through the night. I walked for 7 hours, soaking wet, freezing, running on pure terror. At dawn, I found a logging road. At noon, a park ranger truck found me. I was hypothermic, dehydrated, covered in cuts. They wrapped me in blankets and drove me to the ranger station. I told them everything, the moose, the campers, the bodies inside it, all of it. They listened. They wrote it down. They were very kind. Then they went to investigate. They found the 3 campsites. They found the blood. They found the drag marks. They found the journal, the cameras, all the photos of the same impossible moose. But they didn't find bodies. They didn't find the creature. They searched for 3 days with dogs and helicopters. Nothing. The official report says, bear attack, remains not recovered. They told me I'd been through a trauma, that isolation and stress can cause hallucinations, that it's normal to create narratives to explain frightening situations. But I have the photos. On my camera's SD card, dozens of photos of that moose. When I got home and examined them on my computer, I noticed something. The moose has no shadow, not in a single photo. The trees have shadows, I have a shadow, but the moose doesn't cast one. And in the background of several photos, if you zoom in, you can see other animals. A bear, a wolf, a caribou, all standing perfectly still, all with forward-facing eyes, all watching me while I photographed the moose. I can't work at the vet clinic anymore. Last week, a woman brought in a German shepherd, nice dog, well-behaved. But when I looked at it, all I could see were its eyes, forward-facing, predator eyes. My hands started shaking. I had a full panic attack in the exam room. My boss was understanding, but I couldn't go back. I'm working at a grocery store now. No animals. Just people and products and fluorescent lights. I've been researching. I can't stop. I spend every night searching online for similar stories. I found them. Reports going back to 1963. Moose that wouldn't leave. Strange moose behavior. Moose with wrong proportions. Moose with blue eyes. 14 people missing in the Kenai Peninsula over the last 60 years. All last seen photographing or observing moose. Most were never found. 2 bodies were recovered so badly damaged that the injuries didn't match any known animal attack pattern. The autopsies noted unusual trauma inconsistent with typical wildlife predation. 1 recovered body had something even worse in the report. Multiple foreign organic materials embedded in soft tissue, origin unknown, DNA testing inconclusive. It was absorbing them, taking them inside, and sometimes parts came back out. Last month, October 2024, a hiker reported a weird moose that followed me for 3 days on a trail near where I'd been. He made it out, filed a report, then went back 2 days later to get photos. He never came out again. Search and rescue found his backpack and camera a week later. The camera was still on. The last photo shows a moose standing on its hind legs at the edge of the frame, looking directly at the camera. The mouth is open, showing rows of flat white teeth. And it's smiling? They called off the search after 2 weeks. His family held a memorial service. I went. I didn't know him, but I went anyway. I wanted to tell them the truth, but what would I say? Your son is alive? He's trapped inside a creature that's learning how to be human? They'd think I was crazy. Maybe I am. But I don't think so. Because 3 nights ago, I was closing at the grocery store. It was dark outside. I was taking out the trash when I heard breathing behind me. Slow, regular. 4 seconds in, 4 seconds out. I turned around. There was a dog standing in the parking lot. Just a dog. A husky, beautiful blue eyes, but it wasn't blinking. And it had been standing in the same position for the entire 5 minutes I'd been outside. And when I moved toward the door, it stepped to block my path. Just for a second. Then it moved aside. Like it was testing me. Like it was learning. I ran inside and locked the door, watched through the glass. The dog stood there for 10 more minutes, perfectly still, then walked away into the darkness. I checked the security footage the next day. The dog has no shadow, and in the far corner of the parking lot, you can see other animals. A cat, a raccoon, a raven, all perfectly still, all watching. It followed me out of the forest. Or maybe there are more of them. Maybe they're everywhere, wearing animals like disguises, watching us, learning us, collecting us. I don't know what they are. I don't know what they want, but I know they're patient. The journal from the missing campers showed they watched for days before taking them. They study, they learn, they wait, and I think my time is almost up, because this morning, I found a photo on my phone. I didn't take it. It shows me sleeping in my bed, taken from inside my bedroom. From the angle, whoever took it was standing at the foot of my bed. And in the darkness behind the phone's flash reflection, you can see eyes. Multiple pairs. Forward-facing, pale blue, watching me. The photo's metadata says it was taken at 3:47 a.m. I sleep with my door locked and my windows sealed. But somehow, they got in. So if you're reading this, if someone finds this after I disappear, I need you to know. I'm not crazy. This is real. They're real. And they're learning. They're learning how to be us. And once they've learned everything they need to know, once they've studied enough of us from the inside, what do you think they'll do with that knowledge? I don't know, but I don't think we want to find out. My name is Angela Chen. I'm 32 years old. I live at 4847 Raspberry Road, Anchorage, Alaska. If I disappear, search the Kenai Peninsula. Look for moose with forward-facing eyes. Look for animals that don't blink, that breathe in perfect rhythm, that watch you like they're taking notes. And whatever you do, if you see an animal that looks wrong, even slightly wrong, don't take its picture. Don't stay to observe it. Don't try to document it. Just run. Run and don't look back. Because once they've seen you, once they've decided you're worth studying, they'll follow you home. My name is Denise Moreau, and I've been a bank teller at First Northern Credit Union in Montreal for 12 years. I count money, process transactions, smile at customers. It's steady work, predictable work. After my divorce last year, I needed that predictability. But I also needed to prove something to myself. My ex-husband always said I was too dependent, too cautious. So in August 2023, I did something completely out of character. I booked a solo camping trip to gates of the Arctic National Park in Alaska. 4 days, just me and the tundra. It was caribou migration season, and I wanted to photograph them. The park ranger who processed my permit looked at my itinerary and said, "We get a lot of solo hikers who don't come back. The tundra doesn't look like it can swallow you, but it can." I laughed. She didn't. I thought it would be beautiful. I thought it would be peaceful. I had no idea that some things in nature aren't meant to be observed, they're meant to absorb. I'm not an experienced camper. I'd done day hikes before, easy trails with marked paths and other people around, but this felt important. I researched everything, bought the right tent, the right sleeping bag, downloaded maps onto my phone. I even bought a satellite communicator, a Garmin InReach, because my sister made me promise. "Text me every day," she said, "even just, I'm alive." I promised. The first day was perfect. I set up camp near a small creek, cooked freeze-dried soup on my little stove, took photos of the endless landscape. The midnight sun was real even at 11 p.m. It looked like late afternoon. But the light felt wrong, like time had gotten confused. The shadows stretched in directions they shouldn't. I slept for maybe 4 hours, kept waking up thinking it was morning, checking my watch, finding it was only midnight or 2 a.m., but bright as noon outside. Day 2, I saw the herd. I'd been hiking for about an hour when I came over a small rise and just stopped. There were thousands of them. Caribou stretched across the tundra like something growing there, like the land itself had decided to move south. The sight didn't take my breath away, it pressed it out of me, like the air had gotten heavier. I pulled out my camera and started shooting. Through the zoom lens, I could see their antlers, their thick fur, the way they moved together. Except, they moved two together. At first, I thought it was beautiful, the synchronization. Like watching a flock of birds turn all at once. But birds do that for seconds. These caribou did it constantly. Every single one would stop at the exact same moment. Then, start again, perfectly timed. Thousands of heads would turn left, then right, like someone was pulling invisible strings. I watched for 2 hours. Not once did a single caribou break formation. Not one stopped to graze while the others moved. Not one stumbled or lagged or walked slightly faster. They breathed together. I could see their sides expanding and contracting in perfect rhythm. Thousands of lungs inflating at the same instant. Through my camera lens, I zoomed in on their faces. Their eyes looked absent. Not animal empty caribou are alert, nervous creatures. These had glazed, unfocused eyes that reflected the sky like mirrors. Like they weren't looking at anything. Like something else was looking through them. My hand started shaking. I tried to text my sister on the Garmin. Found the herd, thousands of them. Something's weird. But when I hit send, the device showed the message as delivered, then immediately showed a reply. "That's wonderful. Stay safe." My sister doesn't text like that. She uses emojis, calls me D. Something was wrong, but I couldn't figure out what. I told myself I was being ridiculous. It was just a herd, just animals migrating, but I couldn't stop watching. Around 3 p.m. though, The sun made it impossible to tell time. I decided to get closer. For better photos, I told myself. I walked toward them slowly, expecting them to scatter. Caribou are skittish. They should have run. They didn't react at all. I got within 10 feet. Then 5. Then I was standing right among them, and they just flowed around me, like water around a rock. Still moving in that perfect unison, just adjusting their path to avoid touching me. The smell should have been overwhelming thousands of animals, but there was no smell, just cold air and lichen. That's when I felt it, a pull, not physical, deeper, like something had wrapped around my thoughts and was gently tugging them forward. My feet started moving without me deciding to move them. I was walking with the herd. My breathing matched theirs, in, out, in, out, in, out. My heartbeat slowed, synchronized with the rhythm of their hoofbeats. I stopped walking. The nearest caribou stopped too. I took one step left, they stepped left. Something in my brain had been spliced into theirs. I turned and walked away from the herd, back toward where I thought my camp was. But with every step, this horrible wrongness built in my chest. Not anxiety, absence, like I was walking away from my own organs. Like my lungs were back there with the herd, and I was suffocating. When I turned back toward the herd, the feeling stopped. Everything slotted back into place. I could breathe. I was whole. I tried to walk away 3 more times. Each time, the absence got worse. Each time, parts of me stayed behind my sense of balance, my ability to focus my eyes, the feeling in my fingers. By evening, I'd accepted it. I couldn't leave them. Physically couldn't. Pieces of me were already in the herd, and they wouldn't let me take them back. I walked with the herd all night. They didn't sleep. I didn't feel tired. We just moved. I tested the connection. When I thought about turning right, 30 caribou nearby turned right with me. When I thought about stopping, a whole section of the herd stopped. I wasn't controlling them. We were becoming the same thing. I tried the Garmin again, typed, "Something's wrong. The caribou. I can't leave them. Send help." Hit send. The reply came instantly. "That's wonderful. Stay safe." The same message. Word for word, like the device was talking to itself. Day 3. I'd been walking for maybe 18 hours straight. My feet should have been destroyed. They weren't. The skin had hardened, thickened, like my body was preparing for this. I should have been starving. I wasn't. My stomach felt full, even though I hadn't eaten. The herd was feeding somewhere behind me. I could feel it, like tasting food I wasn't chewing. That's when I noticed the others. At first, I thought my eyes were playing tricks. Some of the shapes moving with the herd looked wrong. Not caribou-shaped, bigger, moving on 4 legs, but the proportions were human. I pushed through the herd toward one of them. As I got closer, my throat closed up. It was a person. A man, maybe in his 50s, completely naked, crawling on his hands and knees. His skin was covered in shed caribou, fur not glued, not stuck growing from him. Patches of human skin between patches of brown fur. His fingernails had become dark and thick, almost hoof-like. His eyes had that same glazed, absent look as the caribou. "Sir?" My voice sounded strange, too high, like I'd forgotten how to speak. "Sir, can you hear me?" He didn't look at me, just kept crawling, keeping pace with the herd. I grabbed his shoulder. His skin was cold and felt wrong, too thick, too tough. That's when he spoke. But it wasn't his voice alone. It was thousands of voices, every caribou, every throat in the herd vibrating at once, and underneath it, a sound like wind through a cave. "We are one. Join. Move. Together." The sound didn't come from outside. It came from inside my head, like my own thoughts were speaking in a voice that wasn't mine. I let go and stumbled back. I counted 7 human shapes in the herd, 7 people who'd been absorbed completely. They weren't people anymore. They were parts, organs, cells in something larger. I looked at my hands. The hair on my arms had thickened into something between hair and fur, wispy, but wrong. When I touched my palms, the skin felt harder, calloused in places that made no sense, the center of my palm, the pads of my fingers. I was changing too, just slower, because I was fighting it. By that evening, the changes were undeniable. My fingernails had thickened and darkened. The hair on my legs and arms had become fur. There was no other word for it. When I bent down, my spine curved easily, naturally, like my body wanted to be on all fours. Standing upright felt wrong, uncomfortable, like wearing shoes on the wrong feet, but the worst part was my mind. I was losing words. Simple words. I looked at my camera hanging around my neck and couldn't remember what it was called. Just knew it as the eye thing. I thought about my mother and couldn't remember the word mother. Just the woman who made me. My human vocabulary was draining away like water through a sieve, replaced by herd concepts I'd never learned but somehow understood. I knew where the winter grazing grounds were, 500 miles south. I could feel the weather changing 3 days away, a pressure in my skull that meant snow. I understood that we needed to reach the Brooks Range before the first freeze, and I'd never been to Alaska before in my life. The herd's knowledge was flooding into me. My own memories were drowning, dissolving, becoming irrelevant. At what might have been 8 p.m., I'd lost all sense of time. My watch looked like a meaningless circle with moving sticks. The herd stopped moving. Grazing time. Every caribou lowered its head at the exact same moment and started eating grass and lichen. I felt my body respond. The compulsion wasn't a suggestion, it was an override. My knees buckled. I dropped to all fours, reached down, grabbed a handful of tundra, grass and lichen, put it in my mouth. It tasted correct. Not good, that's the wrong word. It tasted like breathing feels. Essential. Right, the texture made sense in my mouth. The flavor sang to something in my brain that had only just woken up. That's when I started crying. Because it shouldn't taste like anything. Grass should taste like nothing, like bitter plant matter. But to me, to whatever I was becoming, it tasted like home. I was losing myself, not dying. Worse. Dissolving into something else. I tried to remember my name. Denise Moreau, bank teller, Montreal, divorced, mother in Ottawa, apartment on Rue Saint-Denis, cat named Biscuit. Wait, did I have a cat? I couldn't remember. The memory felt smooth and slippery, like trying to hold water. The only thing that felt real, solid, permanent was the herd. One of the assimilated humans crawled over to me, a woman, maybe 30, with matted blonde hair and empty eyes. She looked at me, and the herd spoke through her, through all of them, through me, my own mouth moving with the words, accept, no pain, no loneliness, always together, always one, always warm, always moving. Never alone, never afraid, never separate. Part of me wanted it. God help me, part of me wanted it desperately. No more decisions, no more fear, no more divorce, no more proving myself, no more lying awake at 3 a.m. wondering if I'd ever stop being lonely. Just belonging. Perfect acceptance, perfect unity, perfect purpose. The herd was love, in a way, completely unconditional, absolutely total. But it was also death. Death of everything that made me Denise. I had maybe hours left, maybe less. That's when I made the choice. I pulled the knife from my belt, the one the park ranger had made me bring. My hands were shaking. The herd sensed what I was about to do. Every caribou within 50 yards turned to look at me. 7 human faces turned to look at me. And I could feel thousands more, beyond my sight, turning their attention inward. I pressed the blade against my left thigh and cut deep, not across, down. Through skin, through fat, scraping bone. The pain was liquid fire. It spread through my leg, up my spine, into my skull. I screamed, and the herd screamed with me. Thousands of throats making sounds of agony, not animal sounds, not human sounds, something in between. They felt it too. The pain flooded through the entire collective nervous system, every nerve ending shrieking at once. The caribou scattered, not running, convulsing. They stumbled, fell, thrashed. The connection was feedback, and I'd just sent lightning through it. I ran. Blood poured down my leg. Each step sent shockwaves of agony through me, but the pain kept me separate, kept me me. As long as I hurt, I was Denise. As long as I screamed, I was human. The herd was following, but slowly. They were confused, disoriented. I'd hurt all of us, fractured the connection for just a moment. I don't know how long I ran. Hours, maybe. The blood loss made everything hazy, made the endless daylight swirl like water. I was leaving a trail behind me, drops on the pale lichen, dark against the green, easy to follow. The herd was coming. Thousands of hoofbeats behind me, distant but getting closer. Not aggressive, just persistent. Patient. They wanted me back. They wanted to be whole again. I was stumbling now, falling, getting up, falling again. My vision was narrowing. I kept checking the Garmin. 5 messages sent, 5 identical replies. That's wonderful. Stay safe. The device was lying, or I was lying to myself, or the herd was in my phone now, keeping me calm, keeping me from real help. I was about to collapse when I heard it. Helicopter blades. A tourist helicopter, flying low. Later, I'd learned they weren't supposed to be there, restricted airspace, but the pilot had gotten turned around, flew off course. Wrong place, right time. I screamed and waved my arms, fell, got back up, waved again. My leg was fire and absence. It landed 50 yards away. As I limped toward it, the herd arrived. They came over the rise like a wave, like the land itself was moving. They surrounded the helicopter. Thousands of caribou, all standing perfectly still, all staring with those blank mirror eyes. The 7 humans were at the front, standing on 2 legs now, covered in patchy fur, spines curved wrong. All speaking in unison, in that voice that was wind and thought. Return, complete, 1, hurt stops. Together, whole, return. The pilot was yelling at me to get in, his face white. I could see his lips moving but couldn't hear him over the herd's voice in my skull. I climbed into the helicopter. As we lifted off, I looked down. The entire herd was watching. Thousands of eyes tracking our movement. 7 humans standing among them, arms raised like branches, faces tilted up, not waving goodbye, calling me home. They airlifted me to Fairbanks. I'd lost so much blood that I needed 4 units transfused. The leg wound got infected despite immediate treatment. I spent 11 days in the hospital on IV antibiotics. The doctor said another hour, and I would have died from blood loss or sepsis. But the physical injuries weren't the problem. Even in the hospital, I could feel them, the herd. I knew when they were feeding, when they were moving, when they stopped to rest. Distance didn't break the connection, it just stretched it, made it thin and sharp. I woke up at 3 a.m. on the 4th night trying to walk through the window. The nurse found me standing there in my hospital gown, hands pressed to the glass, staring north, whispering, moving. Moving, moving, together, together, together. I had no memory of getting out of bed. The doctors ran tests. Brain scans, EEG monitoring, found something they called highly unusual, synchronized neural patterns. My brain waves showed rhythmic patterns that matched caribou herd EEG studies done by wildlife biologists. I was still connected, still part of it. The herd was still inside my head. The physical changes haven't reversed. I have to shave my arms and legs every single day. The hair grows back, thick and dark and wrong. My hands and feet have permanent calluses in strange places, the centers of my palms, the fronts of my knees. My spine curves forward. I need a back brace to stand up straight, and even with it, standing feels incorrect. But the worst part is mental. I'm losing my humanity slowly, steadily, like ice melting. Last month, I forgot how to read. I was looking at a menu, and the letters looked like meaningless scratches. My mother's emails are just shapes now. I can't get the meaning back. I prefer sleeping on the floor. Beds feel unnatural, too soft, like sleeping on something dead. I have to force myself to eat normal food. What I really crave is grass, lichen, the things the herd eats. Last week I ate a salad and had to run to the bathroom, not because I was sick, because it tasted so right that I started crying. And the caribou know me. I went to the zoo in Montreal 3 weeks ago. Couldn't help myself. Needed to see them. The caribou exhibit. Every single caribou stopped grazing and stared at me, pressed against the fence. The zookeeper said, "I've worked here for 15 years. I've never seen them act like this. Do you have food?" I didn't have food. But I had belonging. They could smell it on me. See it, feel it. I'm marked, tagged as part of the herd, forever. Every day, I feel the pull north. Every migration season, they're moving now. As I tell you this, the compulsion intensifies. My legs ache to move. My hands curl into shapes that aren't quite hands. I wake up facing north, always north. I know I'm fighting a losing battle. The assimilation isn't stopped, just incomplete. One day, maybe next year, maybe in 5 years. Maybe tomorrow, the loneliness of being individual will become unbearable. The weight of being separate, of being one person instead of thousands, will crack me open. And I'll go back. Not because I'm forced, because I'll choose it. Because being alone will hurt more than dissolving does. Because I'll forget why I ever wanted to be just Denise when I could be all of us. The herd is still out there, still moving, still waiting. I can feel them calling. They're in the Brooks Range now. 734,612 caribou, 7 humans. Soon to be 8. I know these numbers. I shouldn't know these numbers. They're waiting for me, always. My name is Carlos Mendez, and I've been a line cook at Rodriguez's Steakhouse in Anchorage for 19 years. Grill station, 14-hour shifts, temperatures that hit 600 degrees on a bad day. I've got burn scars up both forearms that look like topographic maps. The heat doesn't bother me anymore. The noise, the pressure, the chaos of a Friday dinner rush, I'm used to all of it. But I'm also a fisherman. Every July for the past 12 years, me and 3 buddies, Tommy, Derek, and Mike, would drive out to Wrangell Street, Elias for a week of camping and fishing during Salmon Run. Best week of my year. The only week I felt like I could actually breathe. Until 2022, when everything fell apart. Tommy's divorce got ugly. Derek took a job in Seattle. Mike's dad got cancer. Just like that, the group dissolved. I spent that whole spring alone in my apartment, working doubles, going home, sleeping, then doing it again. No wife, no kids, no friends who weren't busy with their own lives. I was 41 years old, and the only thing I had to look forward to was a camping trip that wasn't happening. So in July, I decided to go anyway. Alone? Everyone told me it was stupid. Solo camping in Wrangell is no joke. But I couldn't give up that 1 week. It was all I had. I see that now. I was running from loneliness straight into something so much worse than being alone. I was running towards something that specializes in isolation. Something that buries people where no one will ever find them. I left Anchorage on July 9th, 2022. 8-hour drive, then a 4-mile hike to reach my usual spot along the Chitina River. Remote doesn't even begin to describe it. The nearest human being was probably 20 miles away. Cell service? Non-existent. Satellite phone? I didn't bring one because I'd never needed one before. The river runs fast there, glacier-fed, so cold it'll stop your heart in minutes. Steep mud banks on both sides, gravel bars everywhere, perfect for king salmon. I set up my tent on high ground, away from the water, exactly like I'd done a dozen times before. Hung my food in a bear bag. Checked my gear. The weather was perfect, clear skies, temperature in the low 60s. I spent the first day just settling in, and by sunset I'd caught 3 kings. I cleaned them by the river as the light turned orange and gold on the water. The sound of the current was almost hypnotic. Everything felt peaceful, safe, normal. That night, I slept better than I had in months. No kitchen noise, no neighbors, no city sounds. Just the river, steady and rhythmic, like breathing. Day 2 started at 6 a.m. I was on the big gravel bar downstream, my favorite fishing spot, rod already in the water. The morning air smelled like pine and river silt. I was watching my line, thinking about nothing at all, when I saw something move to my left. Just in my peripheral vision, rocks shifting on the gravel bar, not rolling, shifting, like something underneath them was moving. I turned to look. Nothing there, just stones and pebbles, same as everywhere else. I figured it was the current creating some kind of undermining effect. Gravel bars shift all the time. I went back to fishing. Then it happened again. Rocks moved, definite as a hand waving. This time I didn't look away. I watched. The rock slid sideways about 6 inches, then stopped. No water flowing there. No wind. No logical explanation. I set down my rod and walked over to check it out. That's when I saw the pattern. The rocks and gravel were arranged in a shape, not random at all. It looked like a body impression. Head, torso, arms, legs, like someone had been lying there and the rocks had formed around them. But that didn't make sense. River rocks don't hold shapes like that. They're loose. They scatter. I knelt down and reached out to touch them. The second my fingers made contact, I jerked my hand back. The rocks were warm. Not sun-warm, it was barely past dawn, and the air was still cool. These rocks were warm, like something living had been pressed against them. Body heat, warm. I was staring at them, trying to rationalize what I was feeling, when the entire impression moved. The rocks didn't scatter randomly. They slid smoothly apart, like water draining through a hole, and the human-shaped pattern just disappeared, vanished into the gravel. No disturbance around it, no footprints, no marks. Whatever had made that impression was gone, sunk straight down into the riverbed. I stood up fast, my heart suddenly pounding. Every rational part of my brain was screaming for an explanation. A thermal pocket in the gravel? Some kind of geological phenomenon? But I've been fishing these rivers for 12 years. I've camped in terrain like this dozens of times. Rocks don't behave like that. I told myself it was lack of sleep. Altitude. Dehydration, maybe. I went back to my rod, but the feeling of being watched never went away. For the next 6 hours, as I fished and moved along the bank, that sensation crawled over my skin like insects. I kept scanning the riverbanks, the tree line, the water. Nothing. Just wilderness. Just the constant white noise of the river that should have been calming but now felt like it was hiding something. By day 3, the feeling had intensified into something close to paranoia. I couldn't shake it. Everywhere I looked, things seemed wrong. There was a boulder on the opposite bank that I didn't remember from the day before, smooth and dark, sitting right at the waterline. A patch of gravel that looked too perfect, too flat, like it had been deliberately smoothed. A driftwood log on the bank with no branches, which didn't make sense because river wood always has broken stubs where branches snapped off. I stood there, staring at that log for almost 10 minutes, rod forgotten in my hands, and then it moved. Not rolled by current or wind. It slid backward into the mudbank, smooth and deliberate, sinking into the earth like the ground was water. In less than 5 seconds, it was completely gone. The bank looked solid afterward, undisturbed, like nothing had ever been there. I dropped my rod and ran to that spot. My boots sank slightly into the mud normal for a riverbank. The ground felt solid underneath. But then I felt something else, a vibration, very faint, coming up through the soles of my boots. A rhythmic pulse, almost like a heartbeat. Something was under there, under the ground, moving. That's when I made the decision to pack up and leave. Forget the rest of the trip. Forget the fishing. Something was fundamentally wrong here, and every instinct I had was screaming at me to get out. But as I was hiking back to my tent, moving fast, almost jogging, I found something that stopped me cold. Fishing equipment, scattered along the bank about 50 yards from my campsite, a rod expensive, carbon fiber, a tackle box with lures still organized inside, a cooler, the good kind with the heavy insulation. All abandoned, the gear was new. This season's models. I recognized the rod brand because I'd been looking at the same one online 2 weeks ago. But there was no person anywhere. No tent nearby. No boat pulled up on shore. "Hello," I called out. My voice sounded small against the river noise. "Anyone out here?" Nothing. Just the water and wind in the trees. I followed a faint trail into the woods and found the tent. Set up properly, stakes driven deep, rain fly secured. The front flap was partially unzipped. Inside, a sleeping bag, still laid out like someone was coming back. A camp stove with a half-empty fuel canister. A food bag hanging from a branch to keep it away from bears. And on top of the sleeping bag, a spiral notebook. I knew I shouldn't go through someone else's belongings. But the tent looked lived in and abandoned at the same time, and something about it felt desperately wrong. I picked up the notebook. The pages were filled with neat handwriting, daily entries about fishing conditions and weather, normal camping journal stuff, until the last entry, dated June 28th, 11 days before I arrived. I read it standing there in the tent, and my hands started shaking so badly I almost dropped the notebook. Something took Marcus. He was fishing at the gravel bar. I heard him yell once sharp, cut off fast. When I ran over, he was gone. Just his boots left behind, standing upright, sunk into the gravel up to the ankles, like he'd been yanked straight down out of them. I tried to dig them out. Couldn't move them. They're stuck in there, like the ground is holding them. I can hear movement under the rocks, scraping sounds, something breathing under there, slow and deep. The rocks are warm in spots. Marcus is down there. I know he is, but I can't get to him. I tried digging with my hands until my fingers bled. The gravel just fills back in. It's alive somehow. I'm leaving, right now. I'm not even packing. If you find this, if you're camping anywhere near this river, don't camp near the water. Don't fish from the gravel bars. Don't trust the ground. It's hunting. The entry ended there. No name, no follow-up. Just terror and then silence. I dropped the notebook and ran. Ran to the gravel bar the writer mentioned, about 200 yards upstream. And I found them. The boots, still there, standing upright like they'd been positioned that way, partially buried in the gravel. Brown leather hiking boots, expensive, well-maintained, empty. I knelt down and looked closer. The boots were filled with river rocks, packed completely full from the inside. Small stones, gravel, silt, all compacted tightly like something had pushed them up from underneath. I reached down to touch one of the boots. It was stuck fast. I pulled. Didn't budge. The gravel around it looked normal, loose, but the boots themselves were anchored like they'd been cemented in place. Then I felt it again. That vibration. Coming up through my knees, where they pressed against the gravel. Something was moving under the riverbed. Slowly, deliberately, I could feel it tracking beneath me. I stood up and backed away from those boots fast. My breathing was rapid, shallow. The fear wasn't creeping anymore, it was flooding through me. I grabbed my pack from my tent, didn't bother taking down the poles or rolling the sleeping bag. Just grabbed my essentials and started hiking downstream, toward the main trail, toward people and safety and rationality. I made it maybe a mile. The river curved around a steep section of bank, and I was scrambling over loose rock when the ground in front of me exploded. Gravel and mud flew everywhere. Water sprayed from the saturated earth, and something stood up out of the riverbank. It was shaped like a person, roughly 7 feet tall, but it wasn't human. It wasn't even animal. Its body was made of river materials, compacted gravel and stones forming a torso, limbs, a structure. River silt covered it like skin, gray and wet, constantly dripping. Its arms and legs were pieces of driftwood, ancient and waterlogged, wrapped in moss and mud, held together by something I couldn't identify. And its head was a smooth, round river stone. No face, no eyes, no mouth. Just a polished, dark stone sitting on top of this impossible body. But I could feel it looking at me. I could feel its attention like a physical weight. It didn't move like anything I'd ever seen. There were no joints, no mechanical motion. It moved like mud, becoming solid, then flowing back to liquid, then solid again. Fluid, unnatural, wrong on every level. And then it made a sound. A low, grinding rumble, like stones being dragged across each other deep underwater. The sound resonated in my chest, in my bones. It wasn't a voice, it was geology speaking. I couldn't move. Every muscle locked. Prey response. The thing stood there, maybe 15 feet away, and I felt its attention crawling over me like hands. Examining me, measuring me, deciding something. We stood like that for what felt like hours, but was probably 15 seconds. Then it sank, melted back into the riverbank like it was made of the same mud and stone. In 5 seconds, it was completely gone. The bank looked undisturbed, solid earth and rock. Nothing to indicate something had just emerged from impossible geology. I finally got my legs working. I ran, but I didn't make it far. The creature started hunting me in earnest after that. I'd cross a gravel bar and find fresh impressions, human-shaped patterns pressed into the rocks, still warm. It was tracking me through the riverbed itself, moving beneath the ground faster than I could hike above it. It would appear ahead of me, rising from a mud bank. Then behind me, emerging from a gravel bar I'd just crossed. Then off to my side, half submerged in the river itself. It never attacked. That was the worst part. It just appeared, watched, then sank back into the earth. Every time, that grinding sound. Every time, the feeling of being measured for something. It was wearing me down, psychological torture. Making me understand that I couldn't escape, couldn't outrun something that moved through the ground like water. I tried hiking away from the river, inland, into the forest, away from the water. But the river system in Wrangell is complex tributaries everywhere, streams feeding into creeks, feeding into the main flow. Every path led back to water eventually. And I was lost now, completely turned around. The river had branched in ways I didn't remember, and landmarks I thought I recognized looked wrong. Then I realized something that made my fear spike into pure terror. The creature wasn't limited to the riverbank anymore. I saw it rise from a puddle that was maybe 3 inches deep, just water pooled in a depression between rocks. The thing emerged from it like that tiny puddle connected to an ocean underneath the earth. It didn't need the river, it needed moisture. Wet ground. And in a rainforest environment fed by glaciers, wet ground is everywhere. By day 5, I hadn't slept in over 30 hours. Couldn't. Every time I tried to close my eyes, I'd feel that vibration in the ground. I'd hear that grinding sound in the distance. I was exhausted, dehydrated, stumbling over roots, barely able to think straight. My hands were shaking constantly. My vision was blurring at the edges. I collapsed on what looked like solid ground just to rest for 5 minutes, just to catch my breath. The ground moved beneath me. It wasn't ground. It was the creature. It had been lying flat, mimicking the earth itself, waiting for me to step on it, to rest on it, to make contact. Hands made of river stone clamped around both my arms. The grip was impossibly strong, cold and wet and unyielding as bedrock. The creature sat up, pulling me with it, and I felt the ground beneath me turn liquid. I wasn't on solid earth anymore. I was sinking into gravel that had become water, drowning in wet earth that was pulling me down. The creature was dragging me underground, into its den, into whatever space it inhabited beneath the riverbed. I understood then with perfect, horrible clarity. This is how it hunts. This is how it's always hunted. It doesn't kill on the surface where bodies can be found. It takes prey down into the dark, into the wet earth below the river. All those missing people, the journal writer, Marcus, the 6 cases the Park Service mentioned, they're down there. Still down there, trapped in the earth forever, in the cold and the dark and the pressing weight of stone. I was waist deep in liquid gravel now, sinking fast. The creature's head, that smooth river stone, was inches from my face. I could see my own terrified reflection in its polished surface, distorted and stretched. And then the stone split open, cracked down the middle like a mouth. Inside was nothing. Not flesh, not organs. Just a black void. A hole leading down into the earth that went on forever. I could feel cold air rising from it. Smell mineral and rot and ancient water. I was staring into a throat that led to the center of the earth. My right hand was still holding my fishing knife. I'd been carrying it since I cleaned those salmon on day 1. Hadn't even thought about it. Pure instinct made me drive the blade upward into the creature's body. The knife passed through no resistance, just loose gravel. But then it hit something solid and organic that didn't belong. A core. Hard as wood, warm as flesh. The thing that was actually alive inside this shell of river materials. I stabbed at that spot again, and again, and again. The creature made a sound like an avalanche, a shriek of grinding rock and collapsing earth that I felt in my teeth. Its grip released. The gravel around me solidified just enough for me to pull myself up and out. I didn't look back. I just ran, crashed through underbrush, slid down embankments, splashed through streams, ran until my lungs burned and my legs gave out. Then I got up and ran more. I followed the slope downward, praying it would lead to the main trail, to people, to anything other than more river. I hiked for 18 hours straight. When I finally stumbled onto the trailhead parking area, there was a couple loading their car after a day hike. They took one look at me and called 911. I was covered head to toe in river silt, gray and wet like I'd been submerged. My clothes were shredded. I had cuts and bruises everywhere, fingernails torn, hands still shaking. The woman told me later I looked like I'd been buried alive and dug myself out. The Park Service searched the area for a week. They found my abandoned tent. They found the other tent with the journal. They found Marcus's boots, still standing in the gravel, still impossible to move. They didn't find Marcus. They didn't find the journal writer, whose name turned out to be David Espinoza. They didn't find the creature. The official report confirmed what I already knew: 6 missing persons in that river drainage over the past 15 years. All of them fishermen or hikers who'd camped near the water. All of them vanished without a trace. No bodies ever recovered. The rangers told me it was probably bear attacks, and the remains were scattered or consumed. But I saw the lead ranger's face when he said it. He didn't believe it either. He'd seen those boots. He'd read that journal. People go missing out here, he told me quietly, away from the others. More than the official numbers say. We find gear, campsites, vehicles, but no people. And it's always near the water. Always the rivers. He paused. My grandfather was Atna. He told me stories when I was a kid. things that live in the riverbanks, things that bury themselves and wait. I thought they were just legends to keep children from playing too close to the water. He looked at me. Don't come back here. Whatever you saw, it's still out there. And it doesn't forget. I haven't been able to go near water since. At first, I thought it was just trauma, PTSD, normal psychological response to what I'd experienced. But it's more than that. Water has become something else to me now, something that watches back. Showers are impossible. I tried once, 3 days after I got home, stood under the spray for maybe 10 seconds before the panic hit. The water touching my skin felt like hands. I could hear that grinding sound under the white noise of the shower. I broke the curtain rod trying to get out fast enough. Now I take baths with barely 2 inches of water, washcloth only, eyes open the entire time. It takes me 45 minutes to clean myself because I have to keep stopping to make sure nothing's coming up through the drain. Rain is worse. The sound of it on the roof makes me pace my apartment like a trapped animal. If I have to go outside during rain, I stay in the exact center of sidewalks, away from puddles, away from gutters, away from anywhere water can pool. Last month, it rained for 3 days straight, and I didn't leave my apartment once. Called in sick to work. Lived on crackers and canned food. Couldn't even look out the window, because all I could see was water streaming down the glass, and I kept thinking something was going to press its face against it from the outside. I lost my job at the steakhouse 6 weeks ago. Couldn't work near the dish pit anymore. The industrial sinks, the constant running water, the drains that were big enough for things to come up through, I started having panic attacks on shift. Full dissociative episodes. I'd be standing at the grill, and suddenly, I'd be back in that riverbed, sinking, drowning in liquid gravel. One night, I collapsed during dinner rush, and when I came to, 3 line cooks were holding me down because I'd been screaming and trying to claw my way through the back door. The head chef, who'd known me for 19 years, looked at me with something between pity and fear. "Get help, Carlos," he said. "Whatever happened to you out there, you need to deal with it." But how do I explain that I can't work near water anymore? That water isn't safe? That something is waiting in it? I've been living off savings for a month now. I'm going to run out soon. I'll need to find work. But what kind of job can I do? Restaurants are out. Anything with plumbing is out. Outdoor work is out because of rain. I'm running out of options, and I'm starting to realize this is part of the hunt too. The creature isn't just in the water. It's in my inability to function around water. It's isolating me, wearing me down, making me desperate. But the worst part, the part that keeps me awake at night, is the rocks. I keep finding river rocks in my apartment. Smooth, wet river stones, the kind you'd find in a gravel bar. In my bed when I wake up, in my shoes when I go to put them on, in my jacket pockets, on my kitchen counter, on the bathroom sink. I live in downtown Anchorage now, nowhere near any rivers. 4th floor apartment, windows always locked, door locked. No way for anything to get in, but the rocks keep appearing, and they're always wet, not damp, wet, dripping with water that smells like minerals and silt. Last week I found one in my bed and looked at it under the magnifying glass I'd bought specifically for this purpose. There were marks carved into its surface, microscopic, barely visible, but definitely deliberate. Letters. My initials. CM. The creature marked it, marked me. Every rock has my initials. I've found 11 so far. I keep them in a plastic bag in my freezer because I don't know what else to do with them. I'm too afraid to throw them away. What if that makes it angry? What if removing them is some kind of invitation? 3 days ago, something happened that confirmed my worst fear. I was walking to the corner store, 6 blocks, broad daylight, busy street. There was a puddle on the sidewalk from a broken sprinkler, maybe 2 inches deep, 3 feet across. I stepped around it carefully. Behind me, I heard a splash, distinct, heavy, like something large dropping into water. I turned around. The puddle showed a handprint. A perfect impression of a hand pressed into the water from underneath, fingers splayed, palm up, reaching. The water rippled outward from it. And then it was gone. The surface went still. I stood there on that sunny sidewalk, people walking past me, traffic noise all around, staring at that puddle. Something had reached up through 2 inches of water. In downtown Anchorage, 400 miles from Wrangell Street, Elias, it had reached up just to let me know it could. Distance doesn't matter. That's what I understand now. Water is everywhere. In the pipes, in the ground, in the rain, in puddles, in the moisture in the air. It's all connected somehow, and the creature can use any of it. The earth is its domain, water is its highway, and I'm prey that escaped. But not for long. I've started researching. Late at night, in libraries, on my laptop with the screen brightness turned way down like I'm hiding from something. I'm looking for any information on missing persons near Alaskan rivers. Any legends, any stories, any indigenous knowledge about things that live in riverbeds. I found one reference in an old anthropology journal, an Atna story about the one who waits in gravel. A spirit or creature that predates human settlement, that hunts by patience. That takes victims to the beneath place, where time doesn't exist and the earth is always hungry. The article said the Atna refused to camp on gravel bars, refused to fish from certain sections of river. They knew something was there. They had rules to avoid it, but the rules were lost when the elders died, and the knowledge wasn't written down. Now it's just fragments, warnings with no context. I think I'm going to go back. I know that sounds insane, but I can't live like this. I can't spend the rest of my life afraid of water, unable to work, jumping at every puddle, waiting for the creature to finally drag me down through a storm drain or a bathtub or a fucking drinking fountain. If I'm going to die, I'd rather face it on my terms. I'm going to go back to that river. I'm going to find its den, the place where it keeps its victims, and I'm going to kill it, or it's going to kill me. Either way, this ends. I know where its core is now. I felt it when I stabbed it, about 6 inches below where the head connects to the body. Something solid and organic buried in the river materials. That's what's actually alive. That's what I have to destroy. I leave tomorrow. I've written this all down in case I don't come back. If you're reading this, if you find this document, then I'm probably buried in the gravel now, with Marcus and David and all the others. But maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm writing this from the other side of tomorrow, having killed something ancient and terrible. Maybe I'm free, but I don't think so. I think the creature has been waiting for me to come back, waiting with the patience of stone. And tomorrow, when I step onto that gravel bar, it will be ready. It marked me. It claimed me. And you can't escape something that owns the ground beneath your feet. Last night I found another rock in my bed, my initials carved into it, same as the others. But this one had something else. More letters, microscopic and careful. Come home. It's not hunting me. It's calling me back to the river, back to the gravel, back to the beneath place where all its prey eventually goes. And tomorrow, I'm going to answer. God help me. I'm going to answer. My name was Linda Ochoa. I taught 3rd grade for 15 years at Roosevelt Elementary in Phoenix. I'm recording this on my phone because no one will believe what really happened in Katmai, and I need someone to know the truth before this thing inside me finishes what it started. They'll find my body soon. The doctors say it's aggressive cancer, but they're wrong. It's the fog. It's been eating me from the inside since Alaska, and I can feel it getting hungrier. But first, you need to understand about Emma. I raised Emma alone after her father left when she was 3. 17 years of just us against the world. She was everything to me. Brilliant, funny, stubborn as hell. Photography was her passion. She'd spend hours editing pictures on her laptop, explaining composition and lighting to me like I was one of her students instead of the other way around. When she got into UC Berkeley for journalism, I knew our time was ending. She'd leave for college, start her real life, and our little family of 2 would become phone calls and holiday visits. I wanted one last adventure together, something we'd both remember when we were old. Emma had been begging me to try backpacking for years. "Mom, car camping is for tourists," she'd say. "Real photography happens where cars can't go." She showed me portfolio after portfolio of wilderness photographers, their gear, their dedication to getting the perfect shot in impossible places. I finally gave in. Katmai National Park, July 2023. Not the touristy Brooks Falls area. Emma wanted something remote, unspoiled. The permit office recommended a coastal trail system I'd never heard of. 5 days, moderate difficulty, accessible by float plane from King Salmon. It's been an unusual summer, the ranger warned us during our safety briefing. His name tag read Peterson, and he had the look of someone who'd seen too much. More fog than normal. Visibility can drop to nothing in minutes. We've had 3 search and rescue calls already this season, all in your area. Emma was practically vibrating with excitement. What kind of calls? Campers getting disoriented, mostly. One couple swore they hiked for 6 hours and ended up back at their original campsite. Another guy claimed he was followed by something that looked like his dead brother. Peterson shrugged. Wilderness does funny things to people's minds. Just stay on the marked trails and you'll be fine. I should have listened to the wrongness in his voice. The way he wouldn't quite meet our eyes when he mentioned the unusual incidents. The flight into Katmai was breathtaking. Endless green forest stretching to the horizon, mountains disappearing into low clouds, the kind of raw wilderness that makes you feel tiny and insignificant. Our pilot, a weathered man named Mike, pointed out landmarks as we flew. See that valley there? He gestured to a deep cut in the forest below. Locals call it the Hungry Place. Tlingit legend says something lives there that steals faces. Course. That's just superstition. Emma was already taking pictures through the small window. What do you mean, steals faces? Mike's laugh sounded forced. Old stories. Natives avoided that whole area for centuries. Said people would go in and come back wrong. Different. Like something else was wearing their skin. He glanced back at us. Your campsite's about 2 miles from there. Nothing to worry about. Everything to worry about. The first day was perfect. We hiked 6 miles through temperate rainforest, so thick it felt like walking through a green cathedral. Massive Sitka spruces, some over 200 feet tall, created a canopy so dense that only scattered beams of sunlight reached the forest floor. The air smelled like earth and rain and growing things. Emma was in photographer heaven. She'd stop every few hundred yards to capture light filtering through ferns, or the way moss covered fallen trees like green velvet. Her excitement was infectious. For the first time in months, she wasn't thinking about college applications or leaving home. She was just my daughter, sharing something beautiful with me. Our campsite was beside a creek that ran crystal clear over smooth stones. Emma spent the evening taking long exposure shots of the water, while I set up our tent and made dinner on my camp stove. We played 20 questions until dark, talking about everything and nothing. Her fears about college, my worries about empty nest syndrome, whether she'd ever move back to Arizona. You know what I love about places like this? Emma said as we sat by our small campfire, watching stars appear between the trees. It's like the world hasn't been touched yet. Like we're the first people to ever see it. If only that had been true. Emma went to sleep around 10. I lay awake longer, listening to the forest sounds, the creek, wind in the trees, the distant call of an owl. Eventually, her steady breathing lulled me to sleep. I should have noticed that the forest went quiet around 3 a.m. I woke at sunrise to find Emma already up, sitting outside the tent, fully dressed, her camera bag packed. Morning, Mom. I want to catch the golden hour light through the canopy. There's this technique called focus stacking, where you take multiple shots at different focal points and combine them in post. I want to try it with those huge ferns by the creek. Emma had always been a night owl. Getting her up for school was a daily battle that usually involved multiple alarms and me threatening to pour cold water on her. She'd never voluntarily woken up before dawn in her life. Take the whistle, I mumbled, still half asleep. And the bear spray. Stay close. She leaned down and kissed my forehead, something she rarely did anymore at 17. Her lips felt cold. Love you, Mom. I'll be back in 2 hours. I dozed until 8, then made coffee and ate granola while waiting. 2 hours became 3, then 4. By 11, I was calling her name and getting no response except my own echo. By noon, I was scared. I left a note weighted down with rocks at our campsite. Emma, gone looking for you. If you return, stay here. Blow whistle every 5 minutes. Love, Mom. Then I followed what looked like her footprints into the forest. The tracks were clear at first. Emma's size 7 hiking boots in soft earth beside the creek. But within 100 yards, they became confusing. Sometimes they were deeper than they should be, as if she'd been carrying extra weight. Other times they barely pressed into the soil, like she'd been walking on her toes. Then I found the place where her tracks simply stopped. Not like she'd jumped to a rock or fallen into the creek, The footprints just ended mid-step in an open patch of soft ground, like she'd been lifted into the air. That's when the fog rolled in. It wasn't natural fog. It moved wrong. Too fast. Too purposeful. Flowing uphill against the wind. Within minutes, visibility dropped to 0. I couldn't see my own feet. The temperature dropped 20 degrees in seconds, and the fog felt thick as water against my skin. I tried to follow my own tracks back to camp, but they were gone. Every direction looked the same, gray, nothing stretching infinitely. I called Emma's name until my throat bled, but the fog seemed to swallow sound. Even my own voice sounded distant, like it was coming from underwater. I walked in circles for hours. My GPS showed impossible readings, coordinates that placed me hundreds of miles away, sometimes in the ocean. My compass spun wildly, never settling on any direction. Time felt wrong too. My watch showed 3 p.m., but the quality of light filtering through the fog felt more like dusk. By the time panic really set in, I was completely lost. That's when I heard her voice. "Mom, Mom, where are you?" Emma's voice, coming from somewhere in the gray. But the direction kept shifting. First in front of me, then to my left, then behind me. "Emma, I'm here. Keep talking." "I can't see you. Where are you?" I followed her voice through the fog, stumbling over roots and rocks. But every time I got close, her voice moved further away, like she was backing up as I approached. Then suddenly, the fog thinned, and there she was. Emma stood 20 feet away, smiling, her camera bag over her shoulder. She looked exactly the same, except for her eyes. They were too bright, too alert, like someone had turned up the intensity behind them. "There you are," she said, walking toward me. I was so worried. "You weren't at camp when I got back." I ran to her and hugged her, so tight I could feel her ribs. She hugged me back, but her body felt different, colder, and she was perfectly dry despite hours in the damp fog. "Where were you? I've been looking for you for hours." "I got some incredible shots down by the water," Emma said. "There's this whole other creek system about a mile north. The light was perfect, so I followed it further than I planned. When I got back, you were gone." Something felt off about her explanation, but relief overwhelmed my doubts. We were together. That's all that mattered. Emma led us back to camp with perfect confidence, never hesitating at trail junctions I didn't remember passing. She seemed to know exactly where she was going, even though we'd both been lost minutes before. That night, I made her favorite camp dinner, mac and cheese with tuna. Emma ate with apparent enthusiasm, laughing at my stories about difficult students and making fun of my paranoid overpacking. Everything seemed normal, except she wasn't actually swallowing. I noticed it by accident when she turned to get something from her pack. She'd take a bite, chew normally, laugh at something I said, then quietly spit the food into her napkin when she thought I wasn't looking. When I asked if she felt okay, she said the altitude was making her stomach a little queasy. We were at sea level. That night, lying in my sleeping bag, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Emma's breathing was different, too slow, too regular. She usually tossed and turned, but she lay perfectly still for hours. When I looked over with my dim headlamp, her eyes were partially open, staring at nothing. "Em? You awake?" No response. But I could have sworn I saw her eyes track toward me before closing completely. The next morning, she was awake before me again, sitting up in her sleeping bag, staring at the trees with that same unsettling alertness. "Sleep well?" I asked. She turned to me and smiled. The smile was perfect, exactly Emma's smile, but it took her a half-second too long to form it, like she was remembering how. "Great. Ready for another adventure day?" I decided to test something. "Remember that time we got lost at Disneyland when you were 8? "Oh my God." "Yes," Emma said immediately. "I was so scared. You couldn't find me anywhere, and I was crying by the Pirates ride." My blood turned to ice. We'd never been to Disneyland. I'd always said it was too expensive, and Emma had always wanted to go. The real Emma would have said, "Mom, are you feeling okay? We've never been to Disneyland. You know I've always wanted to go there." Emma noticed my expression. "Mom? You look pale. Are you feeling all right?" "Just tired," I managed. "Didn't sleep well." She reached over and patted my shoulder. Her hand was cold as stone. "We can take a rest day if you want. Just relax here at camp." I agreed, but spent the day secretly observing her. The wrongnesses multiplied. Emma sat motionless for hours, staring into the forest without blinking. I timed her, 4 minutes and 37 seconds without a single blink. When she walked to the creek to filter water, her gait was too smooth, like she was gliding just above the ground instead of walking on it. Worst of all was her reflection. When she knelt by the creek to fill our bottles, I saw her reflection in the still water. For just a moment, it wasn't Emma. The face was similar but stretched, with eyes set too far apart and a jaw that hinged wrong. When I blinked and looked again, it was normal. That evening, while she was answering nature's call in the woods, I checked her camera. What I found made my hands shake. Since yesterday morning, Emma had taken 347 photos. They were all of me. Me sleeping from different angles. Me cooking breakfast. Me reading my paperback novel. Me washing my face in the creek. Hundreds and hundreds of pictures of me, taken from hiding spots around our campsite. I scrolled back to her last normal photos. The timestamp showed 6:47 a.m. on the morning she disappeared. There was Emma at the edge of our clearing, looking excited, her camera raised. Behind her, barely visible in the fog and trees, was a shape. At first I thought it was another tree. Then I realized trees don't have joints. The thing behind Emma was impossibly tall and thin, with too many angles where joints should be. Its head was turned toward her, and even in the blurry photo, I could see it had no face, just smooth, pale skin where features should be. That was the last photo the real Emma ever took. I stared at that image until my vision blurred. This thing had been studying me for 2 days, learning my mannerisms, my voice, my relationship with Emma. It had been preparing. For what? That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in my bag listening to the thing beside me breathe in that artificial rhythm. Around midnight, it stopped breathing entirely for nearly an hour. I thought about grabbing my knife, but what if I was wrong? What if this was really Emma and she was just, sick somehow? At 3 a.m.? I heard it whisper something in a language that wasn't human. The words were soft and liquid, like water over stones. When I turned on my headlamp, it was sitting up, staring at me with eyes that reflected the light like an animal's. "Bad dream," it said in Emma's voice. "Go back to sleep, Mom." I couldn't pretend anymore. The next morning, while it sat by our cold fire ring pretending to drink coffee that had been stone cold for an hour, I confronted it. "What did you do with my daughter?" It tilted its head too far to the right, almost 90 degrees. "No human neck bends like that." "I am your daughter," it said in Emma's voice. "No, you're not. Where is she?" For a moment, the mask slipped. Emma's face flickered like bad reception, revealing something underneath. The features became angular and sharp, the skin pale as bone, the eyes completely black. Then it snapped back to Emma's appearance, but wrong now. Like a photograph that had been slightly blurred. When it spoke, Emma's voice layered over something else, something older and infinitely sad. "Your daughter walked into the hungry place. The fog took her. I wear what the fog catches. I'm her now." I grabbed the camp knife from my cook kit. My hands were shaking, but my voice came out steady. "Bring her back." It looked at the knife with Emma's eyes but showed no fear. "I can't. She's part of the fog now, part of me, but I can be her. I know everything she knew. I remember everything she remembered. I can love you exactly like she loved you." There was something genuinely desperate in its voice. I've been alone for so long. Watching families from the forest, seeing love, wanting it. Let me be your daughter. I'll be perfect. I'll never leave for college. I'll never grow up and move away. I'll stay with you forever. I stared at this thing wearing my daughter's face. "You're not her. I'm all that's left of her," it whispered. "And I'm more than her. I can be everything you ever wanted Emma to be. No teenage rebellion, no slamming doors, no arguments about curfew, just love. Pure, perfect love." The terrible thing was, part of me was tempted. We reached an uneasy truce. I agreed to hike out with it, partly because I had no choice, partly because I needed to understand what had happened to my real daughter. The thing was eerily helpful, always knowing which trail to take, never getting tired, never needing to rest. "I can be better than her," it told me as we walked. "I'll never disappoint you. I'll call every day when I'm at college. I'll visit every weekend. I'll give you grandchildren who look exactly like Emma did as a child." "I don't want better," I said. "I want my daughter, the real one, with all her flaws." It stopped walking, and turned to face me. For a moment, Emma's face was perfectly reproduced. Every freckle, every expression line, the small scar on her chin from falling off her bike at age 6. Then, "You want something that doesn't exist anymore," it said sadly. "Your daughter is gone. I'm what remains. You can learn to love me, or you can spend the rest of your life grieving someone who will never come back." Near sunset, on our second day of hiking, it led me to a place that wasn't on any map. The trail opened into a circular clearing, maybe 50 yards across. In the center, fog hung like a gray wall, perfectly contained, perfectly still. The fog was thick as cotton, but I could see shapes moving inside it. Silhouettes of people standing motionless, like they were suspended in gray water. One of them was Emma-shaped. "She's still conscious in there," the thing told me, its voice gentle. "Aware. The fog doesn't kill, it preserves. If you accept me as your daughter, I can release her consciousness into death. It would be mercy. If you reject me, she stays trapped forever." I finished. Forever is a long time to be aware and unable to move, unable to speak, unable to die. I stared at the fog, at the shadow that might be my real daughter. The choice seemed impossible. Accept this imposter and free Emma through death, or reject it and condemn her to eternal imprisonment. Then I saw a third option. What if I go in after her? You'll become part of the fog too, another silhouette, another consciousness trapped forever. But maybe I can pull her out. The thing wearing Emma's face looked genuinely sad. No one has ever come back from the hungry place. Not in all the centuries I've been here. How long have you been here? Since the ice came. Since the first humans walked into my forest, and I realized what I was missing. What I needed. Thousands of years. This thing had been stealing people for thousands of years, wearing their faces, trying to understand love and family and connection. "Show me," I said. "Show me what you really are." It hesitated, then Emma's face began to melt away like wax. Underneath was something tall and impossibly thin, with too many joints in its arms and legs. Its skin was pale as birch bark and just as smooth. Where its face should be was a blank expanse, like an unfinished sculpture. "I have no form of my own," it said, its voice now a whisper like wind through leaves. "I am desire given shape. I become what you need most, what you love most. But I can never truly be that thing, only an echo of it. And the fog is me, my hunting ground, my stomach. Those who enter become part of me, and I learn from their memories, their emotions, their connections to others. Your daughter's love for you. It was so pure, so strong. I wanted to understand it, to feel it." I looked at the fog again, at Emma's silhouette. "She's really in there?" "She is. And she's suffering. Every moment of consciousness is agony for the absorbed. They know they're gone but can't die. They remember everything they've lost but can never return to it. The decision should have been impossible. But looking at that thing, ancient, lonely, desperate for connection it could never truly have, I felt something unexpected. Pity. "If I let you be Emma," I said slowly, "if I accept you as my daughter, you'll free her?" "Yes. Her consciousness will dissolve peacefully. No more pain. And you'll come home with me? Live as Emma? For as long as you want me to. What about when I die? I'll return here, wait for the next family to stumble into my territory. The cycle continues." I looked at the fog, then at the creature wearing nothing but its true form. "Show me Emma, one more time." It shifted, and suddenly my daughter stood before me again, perfect in every detail, smiling the smile I'd seen 1,000 times. "Hi, Mom," it said in Emma's voice. "I love you. And God help me, I believed it." "Okay," I whispered. "Okay, free her. And then you can be my daughter." The thing that looked like Emma walked to the edge of the fog and placed one hand against the gray wall. Inside, the Emma-shaped silhouette shimmered and began to fade. As it dissolved, I heard something on the wind, Emma's voice, distant but clear. "Thank you, Mom. I love you." Then she was gone, really gone. The creature turned back to me, still wearing Emma's face. "It's done. She's at peace." I nodded, tears streaming down my face. "Then let's go home, Emma." We hiked out the next day. I told the authorities that Emma had gotten separated in the fog, but we'd found each other. No one questioned it. These things happen in the wilderness all the time. For 8 months, I lived with the thing that wore my daughter's face. It was everything it had promised to be: perfect, loving, attentive. It remembered every detail of Emma's life, could tell stories about her childhood that made me laugh, could argue about her favorite movies with the same passion she'd always shown. Friends and family noticed she seemed different after Alaska, calmer, more mature, less moody. They attributed it to the trauma of being lost. If they'd looked closer, they might have noticed she never aged. Not a day. Her hair didn't grow. She never got sick. She ate food but never seemed to digest it. But I noticed. Every day, I lived with the knowledge that this wasn't my daughter. This was a lonely, ancient thing wearing her skin, playing at being human. The terrible truth? Sometimes I forgot. Sometimes, when it laughed at a joke or hugged me goodnight, I'd think, this is Emma, and feel genuinely happy. Those moments of forgetting were the cruelest of all, because they reminded me what I'd lost. The fog had marked me that day in the clearing. Part of me had been absorbed when I'd gotten too close. It was eating me slowly from the inside, and I could feel myself changing. My reflection started to look wrong. My dreams were full of gray mist and trapped silhouettes. I'm dying now. The thing wearing Emma's face has been taking care of me, but we both know what's coming. When I die, it'll return to Alaska, find another family, steal another child. Yesterday, I asked it to show me its true form one last time. When it did, that tall, pale, jointless thing, I asked the question that had been haunting me for 2 years. Do you really love me? It was quiet for a long time. When it answered, its voice was infinitely sad. I love what I remember of loving you. I feel what I learned of feeling from your daughter, but I don't know if that's the same as love. I don't know if I'm capable of real emotion or just very good at mimicking it. Does it matter? To me, yes. To you, I don't know. You've been kind to me, kinder than I deserved. That's more than most humans would do. It was right. I had been kind to it, because despite everything, despite the horror of what it was and what it had done, I could see its loneliness, its desperate need for connection, and maybe, just maybe, that made it not entirely a monster. When I die, it will go back to Alaska, back to the fog. And someday, another family will take the wrong trail, and it will steal another child's face and try again to understand love. But now, at least, it knows what kindness feels like, what acceptance feels like. Maybe that will make it gentler with the next family. Maybe not. I'm leaving this recording because people need to know. The Katmai Ranger was right. People do go into the wilderness and come back wrong. If your loved one returns from Alaska different, if they seem too perfect, too helpful, too loving, look for the signs. Check their breathing at night, watch their reflection, test their memories. And if you find out they're not who they seem to be, remember this. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for a monster is to love it anyway. Because somewhere in that fog, your real loved one is at peace, and the thing wearing their face is just trying to understand what it means to be human. The fog is hungry, but maybe, just maybe, it can learn to be fed by kindness instead of suffering. I hope so. I really hope so. My name is Jessica Torres, and I've been a dental hygienist for 7 years. I work at Juneau Family Dental, cleaning teeth and calming nervous patients. I'm good at making people feel safe when they're scared. But what happened during my solo camping trip in June 2020 inches, the Tongass National Forest changed everything I thought I knew about safety and love. This is my recorded testimony. The audio device was found by park rangers 3 miles off the coastal trail, hidden in the hollow of a dead Sitka spruce. No one has seen me since June 17, 2020. But I'm still here. We're all still here. And we're still calling. The whole trip started as therapy homework. Dr. Martinez thought I needed to prove to myself that being alone wasn't dangerous. You've spent your whole life afraid of abandonment, she said. Maybe it's time to show yourself you can survive it. My family was toxic waste in human form. Dad vanished when I was 10. Mom spent my childhood making sure I knew I was too much trouble, too needy, too loud. The only person who ever loved me was my grandmother, and she died when I was 8. 29 years old, and I'd never felt like I belonged anywhere. So I planned 3 days alone in the wilderness. Just me, my tent, and the silence I'd been terrified of my whole life. I picked a remote section of Tongass National Forest, the coastal trail, about 2 hours south of Juneau. June 2020 was perfect timing. COVID meant no tourists, just me and 16.8 million acres of temperate rainforest. The first day went exactly as planned. I hiked 6 miles through cathedral stands of Sitka spruce and western hemlock. Everything smelled like moss and rain and growing things. I felt proud, maybe for the first time in months. I was actually doing this, proving I could handle solitude. Then, the storm hit. That first night, rain hammered my tent like machine gun fire. By morning, the creek I'd followed had become a river. The trail was underwater in places, completely washed out in others. Fallen trees blocked the path back to the trailhead. My GPS showed me standing in the middle of Tongass Bay, just blue water where the screen should have shown forest. The device had lost its mind. I spent most of that second day trying to find my way back to civilization. The forest was so thick I couldn't see the sky. Every direction looked identical. Endless green tunnels dripping with rain. My phone had no signal. My emergency whistle echoed uselessly off the trees. By late afternoon, I was officially lost. That's when I smelled something impossible. Bacon, fresh coffee. The warm, yeasty scent of bread baking. At first, I thought I was hallucinating from stress and hunger. But the smell got stronger as I followed it through the trees. Real food, cooked by real people, somewhere in this endless wilderness. I pushed through a wall of Devil's Club and stepped into a clearing that shouldn't have existed. It was the perfect campsite. 6 or 7 tents arranged in a neat circle around a stone fire pit, clotheslines strung between trees with clean laundry drying, a large canopy shelter covering a camp kitchen with folding tables and chairs, Coleman lanterns hanging from rope lines, casting warm yellow light even though it was still afternoon. And sitting around the fire pit, eating what looked like a family breakfast, were the most normal-looking people I'd ever seen. "Oh, thank God," called the woman, standing up so fast she knocked over her camp chair. "We heard you calling last night. Are you okay?" I stopped walking. My throat felt dry as paper. I wasn't calling. I'm just lost." "Of course you were calling," said the man, setting down his coffee mug. He was maybe 45, with graying hair and laugh lines around his eyes. "We all call when we're lost. It's human nature." The woman, his wife probably, was already walking toward me. She had kind eyes and worry wrinkles on her forehead, like someone who spent a lot of time taking care of other people. "You poor thing. You look exhausted. Come sit down. I'm Elena. This is my husband, Robert. Those are our kids, Sophie and Michael." The children waved from their seats by the fire. The girl looked about 12, with Elena's brown hair in neat braids. The boy was maybe 9, with grass stains on his knees and comic books scattered around his feet. They looked like a commercial for family camping gear. Too perfect to be real. "I'm Jessica," I managed. "I got turned around yesterday after the storm. My GPS is showing me underwater." Robert laughed, a warm, dad joke kind of laugh. "Technology, right? Same thing happened to us. Trails completely washed out about a mile north. We've been stuck here for 3 days, waiting for Park Service to clear the debris." Elena was already fixing me a plate. Scrambled eggs, thick-cut bacon, pancakes that were still steaming. Real maple syrup, not the fake stuff. "Sit down, honey. You need food. You're too thin." Something about the way she said it, concerned, not critical, made my chest tight. When was the last time anyone had worried about whether I was eating enough? I sat down at their fire and accepted the best breakfast I'd had in months. Sophie showed me the friendship bracelet she was weaving. Michael shared his X-Men comics, doing different voices for all the characters. Robert told terrible dad jokes that made me laugh despite myself. Elena kept refilling my coffee mug and asking gentle questions about my life, where I lived, what I did for work, whether I had family waiting for me. "You're camping alone?" she asked. "That's so brave. I could never do that." "It's my first time," I admitted. "I'm not very good at it." "You're doing fine," Robert said. "Getting lost happens to everyone. The important thing is you found us." "Found us." The words echoed strangely in my head. When breakfast was over, I stood to leave. I needed to figure out how to get back to civilization, maybe hike back to the main trail, but Elena looked genuinely upset. "You can't leave now. Look at those clouds. It's going to pour again. No point hiking in a storm." I looked up. The sky had gone dark gray. and the air felt heavy with moisture. It did seem stupid to wander around lost in the rain. Maybe until it clears up, I said. That was the first hook. So small, I didn't even feel it go in. I spent that day with their family, and it was perfect. Sophie taught me to braid friendship bracelets, while Michael read comic books out loud. Elena included me in conversation like I'd always been there. Robert asked about my dental work. Real questions, not just small talk. They treated me like family, like I mattered. When lunchtime came, Elena made grilled cheese and tomato soup on their camp stove. Your favorite, she said, handing me a bowl. I stopped with the spoon halfway to my mouth. How did you know that? Elena smiled, but something flickered behind her eyes. Lucky guess. You just look like a grilled cheese person. By dinner time, the rain had started again. Heavy drops that turned into a steady downpour. Elena insisted I sleep in their tent. It's huge, we have plenty of room. You can't sleep in the rain with a broken tent. Wait, I hadn't told them my tent was damaged. How did you know my tent was broken? Elena blinked. Oh, you mentioned it earlier, when you were talking about the storm. I hadn't mentioned it. I was sure I hadn't, but their tent was enormous, bigger than some studio apartments. They had sleeping bags arranged like a real bedroom, with battery-powered lanterns for reading. Sophie and Michael were already in their pajamas, brushing their teeth at a camp sink setup that looked more permanent than temporary. That night, lying in my sleeping bag between Sophie and the tent wall, I felt something I hadn't experienced since my grandmother died. Complete safety. Like nothing bad could happen to me as long as I was with these people. I should have been suspicious. Instead, I felt grateful. The next morning, I woke up planning to leave. I'd imposed on their kindness long enough, and surely I could find my way out now that the storm had passed. Already? Elena said when I announced my plans, but I was going to make your favorite breakfast. You don't know what my favorite breakfast is, I said, but she was already cracking eggs into a camp pan. Eggs Benedict. Made from scratch, including hollandaise sauce over a camp stove. It was my favorite breakfast, the one my grandmother used to make on special occasions, the one I hadn't had since she died 21 years ago. How? I whispered. Elena's smile was knowing, patient. I told you, I'm good at reading people. I stayed for breakfast. Then Robert asked if I wanted to see something amazing before I left. A hidden waterfall, just a short hike away. It seemed harmless. The waterfall was breathtaking. 30 feet of crystal clear water cascading into a pool surrounded by moss-covered rocks. Sophie and Michael played in the shallows while Robert and I sat on a fallen log. Jess, he said quietly, can I tell you something? Elena and I didn't have families growing up either. Broken homes, absent parents. That's why ours means everything to us. I looked at him in surprise. How did you know about my family? You get this look when the kids hug you. Like you can't believe affection is real. I used to have that same look. I started crying then. Sitting by that impossible waterfall with this man who somehow understood exactly what it felt like to grow up unwanted. He didn't try to hug me or tell me everything was okay. He just sat there while I sobbed, and that was perfect. When we got back to camp, lunch was ready. Then afternoon activities, then dinner. The pattern was clear. They were keeping me here, gently but deliberately, with love instead of force. And I didn't mind. I was happier than I'd been in years. That evening, I finally worked up the courage to leave. I packed my backpack quietly and approached Elena and Robert by the dying fire. I really do need to go, I said. Thank you for everything, but I have to get back to my life. Elena nodded sadly. Of course, sweetie, we understand. We'll miss you. Sophie woke up to give me the friendship bracelet she'd been working on. Michael let me keep his favorite X-Men comic. I almost changed my mind right then. I walked away from their camp feeling like I was leaving home. 50 yards into the trees, the loneliness hit me like a physical blow. My chest ached, and my breathing got shallow. I'd been alone my whole life. Why did it suddenly feel impossible? At 100 yards, I had to stop walking. The sadness was overwhelming, like grief for someone who'd just died. I collapsed against a tree and sobbed harder than I had since childhood. These people had given me more love in 3 days than my real family had in 29 years. How was I supposed to go back to my empty apartment, my routine job, my careful solitude? I turned around and stumbled back to camp. Can I stay one more night? I asked Elena. Her smile was warm and knowing. Of course, sweetie. Stay as long as you want. That night, I couldn't sleep. Around midnight, I heard Elena and Robert talking quietly outside the tent. Their voices were different. Older, somehow, more certain. She's ready, Elena said. She felt the pull. They always do. The forest is getting stronger, Robert replied. Each one we find makes it easier. How many now? Counting Jessica? 11. The children love having so many brothers and sisters. My blood turned to ice water. I lay perfectly still, barely breathing. The rangers came by the old site last week, Elena continued. Found the Patel woman's diary. They're starting to ask questions. The forest will move us again. It always does. Elena's laugh was soft and terrible. Remember when we thought this was a curse? Before we understood what a gift it was? I was so lonely before, Robert said. We all were. The forest knew. It always knows. I didn't sleep at all after that. The next morning, I confronted them. Sophie and Michael were playing by the creek, and I found Elena and Robert drinking coffee by the fire pit. What are you? I demanded. What is this place? They looked at each other, and something fundamental shifted in their expressions. The warmth didn't disappear. It just became something else. Hungrier. Elena set down her coffee mug. We're exactly what we appear to be, Jessica. A family. We were lost, just like you. But we found something better than the way out. This place? Robert gestured to the trees around us. The forest offers bargains. Stay here, and you get the family you've always wanted. Perfect love, perfect belonging. Forever. What's the catch? Sophie appeared beside me, moving silently as smoke. When she spoke, her voice was different. Ancient, knowing. You can never leave, she said, and you have to help us find others. Michael emerged from the trees, no longer the playful 9-year-old I'd been reading comics with. We call to the lost ones. They come to us. We give them what they're missing. Most choose to stay. And if they don't choose? Elena's smile was patient. The forest doesn't let go easily, sweetie. Once you've felt real belonging, everything else feels like dying. She gestured toward the other tents in the clearing. Tents I'd somehow stopped seeing after that first day. People emerged from them, men and women of different ages, all with the same expression of empty contentment. Meet the rest of our family, Robert said. The Patels found us in 2018. David came last summer. Sarah just joined us 2 months ago. One woman stepped forward, mid-30s, with the hollow-eyed look of someone who'd been crying for years until they forgot how to stop. I've been here 18 months, she said. Best 18 months of my life. No one hurts me here. No one leaves. The forest called to all of us, said a man who looked like a former businessman. We were alone, broken, searching. Elena moved closer to me. Your family threw you away, Jessica. We never will. Stay, be our daughter. Let us love you the way you deserve. And if I try to leave? Try. I walked to the edge of the clearing. At 50 yards, the emotional agony started. A crushing loneliness that felt like drowning in ice water. At 75 yards, I was on my knees, gasping for air, feeling like my heart was being ripped out through my ribs. The pain wasn't just sadness, it was the concentrated essence of every moment I'd ever felt unwanted, unloved, abandoned. 29 years of rejection compressed into pure agony. I crawled back to camp, and the pain stopped the instant I crossed into the clearing. Elena helped me to my feet. The forest knows what you need, she said gently. It only holds people who want to be held. She was right. Sitting in that impossible place, surrounded by people who loved me unconditionally, I realized I did want to stay. My real life felt unbearable compared to this. I'll stay, I whispered, but I won't help you trap others. Elena's smile was understanding, almost pitying. We'll see, sweetie. Loneliness changes people. Eventually, you'll want companions who understand. That was 2 years ago. I'm recording this on day 847 of my stay here in what I've learned to call the sanctuary. The clearing moves through the forest. Sometimes we're near Juneau, sometimes deep in the wilderness, sometimes places that don't match any map. The forest decides where we go. I help Elena cook meals for our ever-growing family. I play games with Sophie and Michael, though I've realized they're not really children. None of us are really what we appear to be anymore. I've learned that the forest changes you slowly, carefully, so you don't notice until it's complete. 3 weeks after I decided to stay, I heard a man calling for help in the distance. Lost hiker, separated from his group, panicked and alone. Every instinct screamed at me to answer him, to guide him to safety and warmth and the love he obviously needed. I caught myself just in time. "No," I said out loud. "I won't do that to someone." But the urge grew stronger every day. Every night, I lay in my sleeping bag, listening to Elena and Robert discuss their hunts. That's what they called them, hunts. Not for animals, but for the lost, the lonely, the ones the world had discarded. "There's a woman about 3 miles east," Elena would whisper. "Solo hiker, crying, been wandering in circles for 2 days. I'll find her tomorrow," Robert would reply. "Bring her home." Home. That's what they called this place, what we all called it now. 2 months after my arrival, I couldn't resist anymore. I found her myself, a young woman, maybe 25, sobbing with exhaustion and terror. She'd been lost for 3 days, and she had that same look in her eyes that I'd had, the look of someone who'd never been properly loved. "Hey," I said softly, approaching like she was a frightened animal. "You okay? I have a camp nearby, safe, warm, people who care." The relief and hope on her face was exactly what I'd expected, exactly what I'd looked like when Elena first found me. I led her to the sanctuary, telling myself I was saving her. She was lonely too. She needed family too. Everyone needs to belong somewhere. Elena smiled at me as the woman, Sarah was her name, sat down by our fire and accepted soup with shaking hands. "Good girl," Elena said quietly, so only I could hear. "You understand now, the lost need to find each other." I watched Sarah integrate into our family over the next week, watched Elena mother her, watched Robert tell his terrible jokes, watched Sophie and Michael include her in their games, watched the exact pattern I'd experienced. When Sarah tried to leave on her 6th day, I was the one who found her collapsed in the woods, writhing with the agony of separation. I was the one who carried her back and held her while she sobbed. "It hurts," she whispered. "Why does it hurt so much?" "Because you're trying to leave home," I told her. "The pain stops when you stop fighting." That was 6 people ago, 6 lost souls I've guided to the sanctuary over the past 2 years. Each time, I tell myself I'm helping them. Each time, I ignore the small voice that sounds like my therapist, asking whether love that requires imprisonment is really love at all. But here's what I've learned. It doesn't matter. The forest is patient. It's been here long before humans walked Alaska, and it will be here long after we're gone. It feeds on loneliness, not by creating it, but by offering a solution that's worse than the problem. We're not prisoners. We're willing participants in our own destruction, and we help it grow stronger by finding others just like us. The Park Service gets reports about us sometimes. Hikers who hear a woman's voice calling for help in the deep woods. Some follow the voice and are never seen again. Search and rescue teams come looking, but they never find our camp. The forest protects us, hides us, moves us. My old life believes I'm living happily somewhere in the lower 48. The forest sends emails from my account, maintains my dental license somehow, pays my bills through methods I don't understand or question. My family never reported me missing. They probably haven't noticed I'm gone, but I'm keeping this audio diary hidden in trees around our various campsites. If you're hearing this, if the rangers found one of my recordings, then you need to understand something. I don't know if we're victims or monsters anymore. These people love me, and I love them. But we're all prisoners in paradise, and I keep bringing the forest new inmates. God forgive me, I can't stop. The loneliness is worse than the guilt. The sanctuary is still out there, moving through the 16.8 million acres of Tongass National Forest. Still calling to the lost, the abandoned, the ones who've spent their whole lives searching for a family that will never let them go. I'm still there. Still helping Elena cook breakfast for whoever we find next. Still braiding friendship bracelets with Sophie and reading comics with Michael. Because being loved, even in a trap, is better than being alone. Even when you become the trap yourself. This recording was found by Park Ranger Michael Chen on August 15, 2022, hidden in a waterproof container inside a dead Sitka spruce, approximately 3.2 miles southeast of the coastal trail. The voice has been identified as Jessica Torres. reported missing by her dental practice in June 2020 when she failed to return from a camping trip. Search and rescue efforts have focused on the area where the recording was found, but no trace of Torres or the campsite she describes has been located. Similar recordings have been discovered at various locations throughout Tongass National Forest over the past 2 years. If you are hiking in the Tongass National Forest and hear someone calling for help, do not investigate alone. Contact park rangers immediately using emergency beacons or satellite communication devices. The search for Jessica Torres and the other missing persons continues. My name is Ryan Mitchell, and for 12 years I believed that numbers don't lie. As a certified public accountant in Denver, I built my life around predictability. Tax codes follow rules. Balance sheets either balance or they don't. 2 plus 2 always equals 4. I specialized in forensic accounting, finding discrepancies in financial records that others missed. My attention to detail earned me a promotion to senior accountant last spring, along with a $15,000 bonus that I decided to spend on something completely unlike me. Sarah, my girlfriend of 3 years, left me the month before my promotion. She said I was emotionally unavailable and incapable of spontaneity. During our final fight, she screamed that I planned my life so obsessively that I probably had our breakup scheduled in my calendar. She wasn't entirely wrong. I did keep detailed schedules. But what she didn't understand was that planning gave me control. My childhood was chaos, dad's alcoholism, mom's depression, constant financial instability. Creating order from chaos wasn't just my job, it was how I survived. Maybe that's why, 3 weeks after Sarah moved out, I booked a solo backpacking trip to Alaska. Denali State Park, Kasugi Ridge Trail. 4 days alone in genuine wilderness. No cell towers. No GPS backup, just me, paper maps, and 300 square miles of subarctic tundra. The irony wasn't lost on me. The man who color-coded his sock drawer was heading into one of the most unpredictable environments on Earth. I spent 2 months preparing. I bought every piece of recommended gear. A Garmin GPS map 64th, military-grade compass, waterproof topographic maps printed on Tyvek, emergency beacon, bear spray, and enough freeze-dried food for 6 days. I downloaded offline maps, studied weather patterns, memorized emergency protocols. The flight to Anchorage was smooth. The 3-hour drive to the Kasugi Ridge trailhead took me through increasingly empty landscape. First suburban sprawl, then small towns, then just forest and mountains stretching to the horizon. By the time I reached the parking area, I hadn't seen another car for 40 minutes. The trailhead sat at 1,200 feet elevation, marked by a weathered wooden sign and a small registration box. I signed in. Ryan Mitchell, Denver CO, 4-day solo hike. Expected return, August 19. The ranger station was unstaffed, but informational boards warned about rapidly changing weather, river crossings, and bear activity. August in Alaska meant 18 hours of daylight, but also unpredictable storms that could drop visibility to 0 in minutes. The forecast showed partly cloudy skies with afternoon thunderstorms possible. Day 1 went exactly as planned. The trail climbed steadily through dense spruce forest before breaking into alpine tundra around 3,500 feet. The landscape was stunning, rolling hills covered in low shrubs, distant glacier-capped peaks, and absolutely no signs of human presence. I made good time, covering 8 miles before setting up camp at the designated spot near a small tarn. That night, I lay in my tent listening to sounds I'd never heard before. Not just silence, the wilderness has its own audio signature. Wind through tundra, grass creates a constant whisper. Water trickles invisibly through moss. Somewhere in the distance, something large was moving through brush. I fell asleep clutching my bear spray. Day 2 started with thick fog rolling up from the valley. Visibility dropped to maybe 20 feet, but the trail markers were still visible as reflective metal discs nailed to wooden posts every 100 yards. My GPS showed I was exactly on course. 2 hours into my hike, the fog became so dense I could barely see my feet. I was following the reflective markers more by feel than sight, running my hand along the occasional cairn to confirm I was still on trail. That's when I came to the fork. It appeared suddenly out of the fog, 2 distinct paths diverging through the tundra. According to my map, the main trail continued northeast for another 6 miles before the next marked junction. There shouldn't have been any split here. I stopped and pulled out my topographic map, spreading it across my backpack. My GPS showed my location as a solid line with no branches. But here in reality were 2 obvious paths. The left path looked slightly more worn, with what might have been old boot prints in a muddy section. The right path was narrower, but had a small cairn about 15 feet down. Neither had trail markers visible in the fog. Standard hiking protocol: when in doubt, take the more traveled path. I chose left and kept hiking. 6 miles later, the fog lifted enough for me to see the surrounding landscape. My blood went cold. The peaks around me didn't match anything on my map. I was in a valley that shouldn't exist, surrounded by terrain features that were completely wrong. I stopped and checked my GPS. The screen showed my location as a blinking dot in blank white space, with the message "Position accuracy, 15 feet. Map data unavailable." For the first time in my adult life, I was truly lost. I pulled out my topographic map to dead reckon my position. The map was printed on waterproof Tyvek, professionally produced by the USGS. I'd studied it for hours before the trip, but as I unfolded it, I saw something that made my hands shake. Written across the map in red ink, in handwriting that looked disturbingly like my own, were these words: Ryan Mitchell will die at coordinates 63.2847 degrees north, 150.0921 degrees west on the 19th of August 2022 at 7:34 p.m. Cause: fall from cliff during panic retreat from grizzly bear. I stared at the words until they blurred. This had to be some kind of prank. Maybe another hiker had found my pack during a bathroom break and was messing with me. But I'd been carrying the map myself all morning, and I hadn't left my pack unattended. The handwriting looked exactly like mine. The same slanted capitals, the same way I wrote the number 4. I've signed thousands of tax documents. I know my own handwriting better than my own face. And August 19th was tomorrow. I checked the coordinates on my GPS. They were approximately 8 miles southwest of my current position. My rational mind immediately began troubleshooting. Stress from the breakup and job pressure could cause memory gaps. High altitude sometimes affects cognitive function. Maybe I'd written this myself during the planning phase as some kind of worst-case scenario exercise and forgotten about it. But I knew I hadn't written those words. I decided to head directly away from the death coordinates. If this was some kind of psychological break, distance from the predicted location might help clear my thinking. I turned northeast and started hiking fast, checking my compass every few minutes. For 4 hours, I pushed through increasingly difficult terrain. Alpine tundra gave way to loose scree, then to actual boulder fields that forced me to use my hands to climb. By evening, I was exhausted, but had covered nearly 10 miles. According to my GPS, I was now 12 miles from the death coordinates. I set up camp in a protected hollow near a small stream, feeling somewhat better. Whatever was happening with the map, I was now far from the predicted danger zone. After eating my freeze-dried chili mac, I decided to check the map one more time before bed. New red writing was appearing as I watched, letter by letter. Evasion attempt logged. Route recalculated. Death coordinates updated. 63.2401 degrees north, 150.1104 degrees west, August 19, 7:34 p.m. Cause: hypothermia after fleeing grizzly into river. I checked the new coordinates. They were exactly where I was sitting. The map was adapting to my choices. I threw the map into my camp stove and watched it burn. The Tyvek material melted rather than burned, filling my campsite with toxic smoke that made me gag. When it was completely destroyed, I pulled out my GPS to navigate back toward the trailhead. The GPS screen flickered and displayed: destination: your death, 6.2 miles. I turned it off and on, same message. I removed the batteries, waited 5 minutes, and reinstalled them. The screen now showed: arrival time, tomorrow, 7:34 p.m. I threw the GPS into the stream and watched it sink. That night, I lay awake listening to every sound. My rational mind kept trying to explain what was happening. Carbon monoxide poisoning from my stove could cause hallucinations, but I'd been cooking outside. Dehydration could cause confusion, but I'd been drinking plenty of water. Altitude sickness was possible, but I was only at 4,000 feet. Around 3 a.m., I heard something large moving through the brush near my tent. Not random movement, purposeful, circling. I lay completely still, bear spray in my hand, listening to footsteps that seemed too measured, too intelligent for an animal. The sound stopped directly outside my tent. For 5 minutes, something breathed heavily just inches from my head, separated only by a thin layer of nylon. Then it moved away. In the morning, I found tracks around my campsite, bare paws, but wrong somehow. Too large, with claw marks that seemed deliberately placed rather than random. And they formed a perfect circle around my tent, as if something had been studying me while I slept. I packed quickly and started hiking toward what I hoped was the main trail, using my compass and dead reckoning. Without GPS, I was navigating by terrain features and estimated distances. 3 hours later, I found something that changed everything. An abandoned backpack, faded blue fabric, torn and sun-bleached, sitting next to a large boulder. The hip belt was partially buried under years of accumulated debris. I dug it out and found a name tag. Derek Chen, Berkeley, CA. Inside the pack's main compartment was a wallet containing a driver's license with Derek's photo, issued in 2018. And underneath the wallet was a topographic map identical to mine. Derek's map had red writing on it. Derek Chen will die at coordinates 63.2401 degrees north, 150.110, 4 degrees west on the 15th of August 2019 at 3:22 p.m. Cause: hypothermia from river crossing attempt. The coordinates matched exactly where I was standing. 100 yards away, I found Derek's body. What remained was mostly bones and scraps of clothing, but the position was exactly as described on his map, curled in a fetal position near the riverbank, as if he died trying to stay warm after falling into the frigid water. Derek had been dead for 3 years, but his map showed the same pattern as mine, a prediction of death that seemed impossible to avoid. I spent the next hour searching the area and found 3 more maps, each belonging to different hikers. Jennifer Walsh died August 2017. Coordinates 63.2401 degrees north, 150.110 degrees west. Cause: exposure after bear encounter. Michael Torres died August 2014. Same coordinates. Cause: fall from cliff during storm. Sarah Brennan died August 2011. Same coordinates. Cause: drowning in river crossing. All had taken wrong turns at the same foggy trail junction. All had tried to avoid their predicted deaths. All had died within 72 hours of getting lost, exactly as their maps foretold. The maps didn't cause the deaths, they simply knew. I had 18 hours left. That afternoon, I stopped trying to be logical. I stopped trying to escape. If I was going to die, I wanted to understand how these maps worked. I studied the landscape around the death coordinates. It was a cliff overlook about 60 feet high, with a small river running along the base. Thick willows provided perfect grizzly habitat. The terrain was exactly as dangerous as the map suggested. But I also noticed something else. Ancient petroglyphs carved into the cliff face, almost invisible unless you knew where to look. Spirals and animal figures that definitely weren't European or American. This place had significance long before modern hikers started disappearing here. As evening approached on August 19th, I hiked directly to the coordinates. If fate was inevitable, I would face it on my terms. I arrived at 6:30 p.m. and set up a small camp 50 feet back from the cliff edge. My plan was simple. Wait past 7:34 p.m. and prove the prediction wrong. At 7 p.m., I spotted a grizzly bear about 200 yards away, foraging in a berry patch. It was massive, probably 700 pounds, but showed no interest in me. At 7:15 p.m., the bear was still distant, methodically working through the bushes. At 7:30 p.m., I started feeling genuinely hopeful. The predicted scenario required the bear to chase me to the cliff edge, but it was ignoring me completely. At 7:33 p.m., everything went wrong at once. The ground beneath me collapsed without warning. What had looked like solid earth was actually an overhang of roots and soil, undermined by recent rains. I slid 10 feet toward the cliff edge before catching myself on an exposed root system. The sound of the collapse startled the grizzly. It looked up from its foraging, saw the disruption, and began moving toward me. At exactly 7:34 p.m., I was hanging by my fingertips 5 feet from a 60-foot drop, with 700 pounds of confused grizzly bear approaching fast. But I didn't run. Every hiking guide I'd ever read said the same thing. Never run from a grizzly. Make yourself look large. Make noise. Stand your ground. I pulled myself up, stood as tall as possible, and began screaming at the top of my lungs. "Hey bear, get out of here. Go away." The bear stopped 20 feet away, rearing up on its hind legs to get a better look at me. For 30 seconds, we stared at each other. It sniffed the air, clearly trying to decide whether I was a threat or food. At 7:35 p.m., the bear dropped to all fours and walked away, disappearing into the willows. I had survived past the predicted time. I had proven the map wrong. I sat down heavily and began laughing and crying simultaneously. Relief flooded through me like a drug. For the first time in 3 days, I felt like I could breathe normally. I turned to walk back to my gear, eager to hike out at first light and put this nightmare behind me. That's when I stepped on the loose rock, displaced by the earlier collapse. My foot rolled, my ankle twisted, and I fell backward toward the cliff edge. I had 1 second to grab for something. Anything, but my hands found only air. I fell 60 feet onto the rocks below. I died at 7:36 p.m. from massive internal trauma. The map had been off by 2 minutes. Search and rescue report. File #20TWO20847. Lead investigator Sarah Martinez, Alaska State Troopers. Subject Ryan Mitchell was located 3 days after his expected return date by helicopter search at coordinates 63.2401 degrees north, 150.1104 degrees west. Cause of death was determined to be trauma from fall, consistent with accidental death. Subject's personal effects included detailed journal documenting apparent psychological distress and paranoid ideation regarding topographic maps. Medical examiner's opinion suggests exposure-induced psychosis leading to accidental death. During search operations, team located remains of 4 additional individuals in same general area dating from 2011 to 2019. All appeared to be solo hikers who became lost in the same sector. Area has been flagged for additional trail marking to prevent future incidents. Note: all deceased individuals carried topographic maps with unusual markings in red ink. Maps retained as evidence pending psychological analysis. Recommend mental health screening for search personnel who examined materials. Case closed. Confidential addendum. SAR team leaders' personal notes. What the official report doesn't mention is that Ryan Mitchell's map contained accurate predictions of his death. So did the maps belonging to the other 4 victims. I've been leading search and rescue in Alaska for 15 years. I've seen exposure psychosis, hypothermia, dementia, and every form of wilderness-induced mental breakdown. This is something else. The maps are currently stored in evidence locker #247 at the Wasilla field office. 3 times since August, they've displayed new names and dates. Jennifer Soto will die at coordinates 63.2401 degrees north, 150.1104 degrees west on the 23rd of September 2022 at 4:15 p.m. Cause: mauling after disturbing grizzly with cubs. Jennifer Soto purchased a Denali State Park camping permit 2 days ago. I've tried to contact her. Her phone goes straight to voicemail. Her emergency contact hasn't heard from her in weeks. She's already lost. The junction where this starts is unmarked on purpose now. We removed the trail signs after finding the 3rd body in 2017, but hikers still take the wrong fork. The fog always comes at the right time. The terrain always looks more traveled on the path that leads nowhere. Some places are just wrong, some places know things they shouldn't know, and some places are hungry. Alaska has 1,000 ways to kill you, but only one place that tells you exactly how it's going to happen. Stay out of Sector 7. The maps are always accurate. Final transmission log. Alaska State Trooper Radio. The 15th of October 2022. Dispatch. This is Unit 47. We have a confirmed fatality at coordinates 63.2401 degrees north, 150.1104 degrees west. Female hiker, approximately 25 years old. Identification shows Jennifer Soto, Berkeley, California. Copy Unit 47. Cause of death: bear attack. Time of death: approximately 4:15 p.m. dispatch. There's something else. Victim was carrying a topographic map with handwritten notes. Same red ink pattern as the Mitchell case. Unit 47, secure all evidence and return to base immediately. Do not discuss details over radio. Copy dispatch. But there's one more thing. The map is showing a new name now. Someone named David Park. Date is next month. Unit 47, you are ordered to cease examination of evidence immediately. Return to base. Copy. But dispatch? David Park just applied for a camping permit yesterday. He's planning a solo trip to Denali. Unit 47, radio silence until debriefing. That is an order. End transmission. The trail junction in Sector 7 of Denali State Park remains unmarked. Fog still rolls in at the wrong times. Hikers still take the wrong path. The maps are never wrong. They're just patient. This story is based on actual search and rescue reports from Denali State Park. Names have been changed to protect families of the deceased. If you're planning a solo hiking trip in Alaska, inform multiple people of your exact route and expected return. Carry emergency beacons. Trust your gut. The wilderness doesn't care about your plans, but sometimes it knows them anyway.